6th. Thanks for joining us. Can I have a motion to retire to executive session to discuss personnel items and negotiation? A second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We will be reconvening around 7 p.m. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am smiling. It's hard to tell. Nice to see everybody. Please join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have emergency exits on all sides of the room in case anybody needs one. So it's nice to be back in person. We're doing things a little differently, trying to adhere to the 50-person gathering limitation that we have. So we do have 50 people that are able to be in the gym. We also have people that are in our auditorium, and we're being simulcasted into there. We use the registration system to allow community members to attend in person, and we're placed in one of these two places, but we're also being live streamed from home, and there will be an opportunity for visitors, whether you're in person or whether you're watching from home. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education, and there will be an opportunity for community involvement, whether you're in person or not. You will be able to participate in our meeting tonight. If you are in the gym, when I invite community members to come to the mic, you may do so. If you're in the auditorium and when you would like to make a comment, when it's time to do so, you can ask the security guard to escort you to the gym, where you will join us at the mic. If you're home, you are able to write to us at boe@rvcschools.org. A few rules we need to review about public comment, whether you're live or on email. You must state your name and address before making your comment or asking your question. If in person, you will be restricted to one visit to the microphone and a 3-minute limit. If you are writing in, you are limited to one email per community member. You may not address any individual member of the board, nor may you mention the name of any student, staff member, or community member. If these rules are violated, we will ask you to step down from the microphone, or we will not be able to read your comment. So we were going to turn this over to Superintendent Chang, who was going to give us an update on the school reopening plan, and I had asked him for a clarification because we had many emails coming in asking if we had changed our plans for K-5 and 6-12.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight I'm going to address a couple of things that we're going to be doing at the start of the school year, reviewing our plan as we had put out. To answer your question and the questions that have been coming in, our plans have not changed since our last board meeting when we put out that we would have a remote option as well as an in-person option for our elementary schools and a red and blue hybrid option at the middle and high school levels. A couple of things to note as we move forward in terms of looking to the next couple of weeks. In an effort to provide clear quality instruction and an avenue for our teachers to be prepared and prepped going into the school year, we have decided to make a couple of changes at the last board meeting to our calendar. We had moved May 28th, which is the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, to be closed and move that date to the front of the year to September 1st to turn it into a superintendent's conference day in order to provide additional support for our teachers going into the 2020-2021 school year. Additionally, we've added a second superintendent conference day to September 2nd, which would then we would be able to provide additional support, planning time, go through all the processes that we're going to be going through in this pandemic, as well as the third that was already planned for going into the school year. So that was kind of the plan going in, to bring everybody back in within that first week in September with our staff, and then going into the following week with Labor Day being on Monday, to take advantage of a 4-day week to provide some level of orientation, particularly for our youngest learners at the elementary level. What that meant was to be able to do somewhat of a red and blue schedule also at the elementary levels, where you had 50% capacity of the students in at the elementary to allow for our teachers, our support staff, as well as our students to acclimate at the beginning of the school year from not being in school since March, I believe around March 18th, along those weeks when we closed. So in those two-day breakups between September 8th and 9th and 10th and 11th, what we're looking to do is to orient our students back, whether that's setting expectations, looking at the orientation of the school, getting them into the process, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. A lot of things are going to be different at the beginning of the school year, things that we've never done before, such as temperature checks, making sure that, we're washing our hands, making sure that we're keeping 6 feet apart when we can, when using desk barriers and desk guards in the elementary schools. So there's a lot of this that needs to be acclimated for our youngest learners. With that in mind, we've also understand that those people who've chosen to go remote, particularly at the elementary school, would want to be able to get to know their teachers, meet them, see them, kind of get an understanding and a relationship built. So what we are saying for those days in that first week, we've added the remote kids into the red group as well as the blue group, and you have every opportunity to come in and to meet with those teachers while we have less capacity within those buildings. Now, I know that there's certain people out there that are probably not going to be able to make some of those schedules. I ask that you reach out to the principals, and they're open to being able to work with you and scheduling a time so that they could at least make some type of contact with those students as they return back to school. Come the 14th, which is the following Monday, we will have all the students back into a regular flow of a 6-day cycle, going through the whole week in the classrooms with desk guards. So that is the plan that we put out a few weeks ago in terms of what we've decided to do. The strength of our plan is this. We have fluidity in the plan where we created not only an in-person model, we understood fully what a hybrid model looks like, and we're also able to go fully remote if needed. Our plan allows us to do that without breaking up the continuity of instruction for both the teachers and the students, to keep fluid movement throughout the course of the year, to get from September all the way to the end of the school year in June, where instruction, for the most part, would not be disjointed. So with that, I am asking parents to understand if we go remote, and if you choose to go remote, to stay remote until the days where you would have to come back in, where we've put markers for the availability for students who are remote to come back in. Those dates are November 2nd, January 4th, and March 1st. This will also go out in a letter tomorrow so that everyone has an awareness of these dates. We're asking that you stick to this, again, for all the reasons that we're talking about. There is continuity of instruction, there is continuity of structure. Our kids need it, our teachers need it, and for us to be successful, we're asking to keep with this schedule. The other part of it is, as we go through this year, there's going to be a lot of thought and thinking into what we need to do throughout the course of the year. What do we need to adapt to? What are the challenges that are going to come up? What are the curveballs that this virus is going to throw at us that we need to be prepared for, which we don't all have the answers for right now? But I could tell you that every day that we work and everything that we do in terms of our committee meetings, the updates that we give to the board, it is to make sure that we are able to adapt as quickly and as fast as we can to ensure that the level of safety and the quality of instruction remains consistent throughout the course of the year. So in all that we're doing, we are also going to have benchmarks in our own minds, from the administration all the way down to the teachers and the staff, to be able to check where we are, where we have been, and what we could be doing better, or what things that we need to adapt to enhance the ability of our students to be in the school buildings, as well as get quality instruction while they're at home. All of these things were put into place. We started, literally the day that I first started, we put together a committee, we put together committees, subcommittees, talked with my administration about what are the things that we may need. And when we started, it was this big balloon of ideas, big balloon of thoughts, a lot of unknowns. And I could tell you, even though we have a solid plan, and even though we are full ready to go in a couple of weeks, the questions are coming from our answers. Every answer that we solve, there are more questions. And I could tell you that we've looked, thought through, vetted, tested almost virtually everything everyone else has been doing. We've been listening to what all the other school districts are doing. We've been listening to what all the parents have been telling us. We've been listening to what the administration has been looking into. And I could tell you the plan that we came up with stays true to the core of what RVC is. And as I've learned since coming here, it is about all. It is about ensuring that we are able to give access to all students. This schedule, these plans that we can move in and out of without disrupting as much as we can allows for that. So that is our plan, and we look forward to being able to, one, address our teachers when they come back in, and then also to be able to welcome our students in this brave new world that we're coming into. And I know that the teachers, the administration, and the board are extremely excited to open our doors come September 8th. So, Madam President, that is my report on the opening and our plans moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. One more clarification, if you wouldn't mind, just talking a little bit the last time about attendance and people being counted as present for logging in. Can you talk about some of the circumstances where that would be an acceptable scenario so that people understand how that works?
Yes. If a student is in a position where they are in quarantine or in isolation, attendance will count when they log on if they're forced to be at home to do so. In terms of thinking about, again, there's a lot of thinking processes that go into saying what it is that we're going to be able to do and what we're going to allow. The more chaotic that we got in terms of the free flow that might have happened caused more issues for us, particularly in scheduling our services, scheduling for our teachers, scheduling for resources, planning-wise, in terms of all of those things added to a situation that we may create instability. And the one thing that we want to make sure that we have is stability. So we're asking that those students that need those accommodations in terms of quarantine and isolating are the ones that are going to be counted in terms of the attendance levels of so. And if you have any extenuating circumstances, those are things that you could talk to your principal directly about, and they need to be, these extraordinary circumstances in order to be counted as attendance, but that's something that you would have to talk with the principal with. But we are trying to reserve that so that we could have continuity, that we could have structure is what we need, flow is what we need, a rhythm is what we need to get everyone back in, particularly when things are completely new and different.
Any questions from board members for Superintendent Chang on the reopening plan?
Yes, Mr. Chang, so far our focus has been on getting our students back safely, as you mentioned, and rightfully so. Once we're able to get that underway at least, it came out through the committees, the question multiple times about what tools we might be making available to parents to help them and assist them with the technology and the platforms that we're going to be using. So I don't know if you or Dr. Pelletieri can just speak to that a little bit for our parents.
Is Dr. Pelletieri back down?
No, I don't
He's
think
not
so.
back down here.
Sorry, I can't see that far.
Yeah, so that would be me. I think what we're trying to do is,
Here it comes.
Here he comes.
well, he could pick up for me after. What we're trying to do is we want to partner in this. We want to be able to ensure that there is ability for parents to feel comfortable within situations where resources need to be more guided for our students at home. So, we haven't completely formulated exactly what that's going to look like because we're still in the midst of having teachers plan these lessons. We know how the flow of the day is going to look, but these lessons specifically, what they're going to detail, that's going to be the work of the teachers that get into the buildings. And that's what we're using those days to be able to allow for them to develop. As that starts to develop, we're going to get a better understanding of the utilization of the resources or the digital resources that we can put into place. And some of that would be if we can be able to provide some idea of how a Google Classroom works, how a Google Meet works, how a breakout room works. We're going to try to provide that in terms of our COVID section of our website as well. This is new, not just for students, but this is also new for parents. We get that. We understand that. And like doing anything else, we've noticed it today at the board meeting. Things can happen. So how best do we prepare? Like, who do we contact? Who do you go to? What are some of the things that you need to press? How do you troubleshoot? simple things like that may be very vital moving forward. So we want to be able to provide that for our parents in a way that's in line with the lessons that are being planned. So there's not too much interruption directly to the teachers, but more so that it's more of an assist coming from the parents in those situations.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to our committee reports, starting with the Finance Committee, which is going to be given by Mrs. Liz Dion.
Thank you. So the Finance Committee did not officially meet since our last board meeting, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of purchasing going on. So Mr. Bartels did reach out to sort of review things that were unexpected purchases that all have to do with COVID and opening the schools. So we just wanted to review a couple of things that we purchased. And Mr. Bartels, please jump in when I say something wrong.
Okay.
We've ordered, I think, 50 HEPA air filters, which will be used throughout the district for spaces that do not have fresh air, that are indoor spaces that have no window and no ventilation, or fresh air ventilation. And they should be arriving later this week.
No, we actually have those already.
They've already arrived. So
Yeah, we have identified all the rooms that don't have any windows or ventilation, so those are being assigned to those rooms. We still have a number available, so we're going to be assigning those to interior spaces that do not have windows. They may have ventilation, but they don't have windows for fresh air.
Okay. Okay. We also purchased 300 microphones. I believe these are Bluetooth microphones that are given to all staff. Do you want to talk about that?
More. I think
Dr.
Pelletieri could probably
Thank you.
do that a little better.
I was fixing YouTube. I apologize, but I fixed it. It's back now. Actually, Bob did it all. Thank you. We did purchase microphones. We felt, again, in an environment where we're talking through masks and listening through, well, not really listening through masks, but talking through masks, and it can be muddled, the voice, and hard to hear. So we did go out and purchase 300 Bluetooth microphones for all of our teachers. They are en route and will be disseminated to our teachers hopefully early next week.
Fabulous, thank you. As everybody walked in today, everybody had their temperature taken, I'm assuming? Please say yes. All of our students will have their temperature taken. We're also we're purchasing an app, because you should have also been asked 3 questions. Just nod your heads, yes. There'll be an app that will go to, I believe, all staff members and family members also. Staff members will have to answer this daily. Families have to answer it once a week.
Correct.
Look at that. So the app is in progress. We're hoping to have it soon?
Yes.
Okay, look at that. So there was that purchase. In the middle and the high school, since we're hybrid, half of all desks and tables throughout the district have all been taken out of the rooms. So we needed a place to put them. Most places do not have big empty spaces to put them in. So if you drive around the district, you'll see really, do I say, they're not beautiful pods, so we're renting, so far I think we have 10 of them.
Storage pods, yes.
Storage pods around the district. I promise for those that can see them in the front of buildings, we promise they'll be gone when COVID's gone. Right, can we say that?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to the desk guards that we purchased for all of our elementary desks, we're buying clear barriers for our office and other desks throughout the district for protection, for the same reason.
The same thing to keep separation. So for office staff, we'll have them at main offices in the buildings, security desks at the entrances, and so forth.
Okay. And then, not lastly, almost lastly, we're increasing our internet bandwidth. We're doubling it, apparently, right? We're doubling our internet bandwidth. It's going to take about a month to completely upgrade, but it's with everybody on Google Classroom, we felt it necessary to do that. And then, as you can imagine, we're purchasing masks, lots and lots of masks. So every elementary school, every school will have a supply of masks, and we're also purchasing clear masks. Dr. Leahy, you want to talk about the clear masks?
Yes, there's circumstances where it's very important for a provider to be able to see the lips of children, the children to see the lips of their providers. For example, for speech therapy, we have some situations where a student or staff member may have a hearing impairment that requires for them to read lips, and in all these circumstances, we will be providing clear masks to accommodate those needs. Also, for the children in grades K to 1, probably a good idea that they see a smile, they see their teachers' faces, and we did also purchase them for the younger grades, teachers.
Thank you. And that is the report from the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from board members? I had a question for Mr. Bartels. Could you give the community an update on the state aid cuts that are expected?
I'm sorry, on what?
For the state aid cuts that might be expected?
Yeah, we are seeing about a 20% cut. The state actually has started with aid that was due to us from last year. We typically get some delayed state aid payments for the previous year, which we need to accrue. So we were supposed to get that in September. So we're going to be getting an 80% cut on that piece of the aid as well as our 2020-2021 aid that we're expecting. But we're still expecting to see a full 20% decrease unless there's some additional funding provided by the federal government to New York State to make up for some of the losses.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Dion. I'll be giving the Policy Committee minutes from August 20th. The committee members are Mrs. Wong, Mr. Chang, Mrs. Dion, and myself. We had a guest attendee, Dr. Pelletieri, this time. We reviewed Policy 5676, which is on our agenda tonight. That's our privacy and security for student data, student, teacher, and principal data, and the form attached. There was a section that we had previously discussed as board members that had to be verified by BOCES, and it was. So we've accepted that paragraph into the policy for tonight. We reviewed the language regarding the amount of time acceptable to report a breach, and also about student data, changing language to make sure parents understood that they could not access any student data, but just their own student data. We changed only on the form the official policy title, so those are up later in the agenda. We also put up 2 new policies tonight that we'll speak about later, and that's 7318, and that's the use of district-owned mobile devices, and the form attached. We agreed to change all of the language to computing device versus mobile device for consistency throughout. All references to iPads were also changed to computing device, since the district will be using Chromebooks in the near future. The Athletics Advisory Committee, I brought to the attention of the Policy Committee that they asked for small clarification language for 6480 and 6480F, and those documents were sent to the board ahead of the meeting this evening. We will also continue to work through a checklist of items that we would like to see in a new memorial policy that we would like to be putting into place. The committee agreed to invite John Murphy to our next meeting to review the checklist, and we would like to keep a moratorium on future memorials for the time being. Any questions from board members? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Barry is going to give us a curriculum update.
Thank you. The Curriculum Committee met on August 19th, and Dr. Pelletieri, Dr. Sampino, Mr. Chang, Mrs. Farizani, and myself were in attendance. The first group of items I'm going to discuss falls under the umbrella of technology. So there is an update on Chromebooks. Unfortunately, their arrival has been delayed, so we are now expecting their arrival in December. Students and staff will continue to use current devices until their arrival. Administration will likely plan on a January distribution process if they, in fact, arrive in December. Bandwidth, next category. Project to increase from 1 gig to 2 gig is underway. This will make for a better learning experience for students on site as well as students learning remotely. Rockville Center is currently paying $5,205.31 a month, including taxes and fees, for 1 gig 50K minutes of use, internet, voice, DDoS, mitigation, and intrusion protection. The total cost for the transformation to 2 gig 50K would be $7,261.56 per month, including taxes and fees. This is an increase of $2,056.25 per month. Wireless connectivity is also being worked on throughout the district. The district is installing upgraded wireless access points in all classrooms throughout the district. They're adding wireless access points to the exterior of every school building, upgrading our Alcatel wireless controllers. This will improve consistency in connectivity and better control of Wi-Fi. District is also working to provide wireless connectivity to students and teachers that don't have any in their homes. Then there were some additional technology items. The district is continuing its work to ensure that every student that needs or wants an iPad has one, along with the charging blocks and cables. Every laptop in the district has been upgraded with a new solid-state hard drive, and we're giving each teacher in the district one of these upgraded laptops with a built-in camera and microphone so that they can provide instruction to remote students. Every teacher has connectivity in their homes in the event that all students and staff have to be remote. The district is reconfiguring computer labs and classrooms to accommodate the new safety guidelines. The Apple iMac computers in all high school music, art, and coding labs are being upgraded. Establishing a virtual private network is underway so that staff can access their district files and materials while they are off-site. The district is also testing wireless microphones to make remote education an even better experience for teachers and students. Current quote is $30,000. The cost per microphone is $94. There would be a need for 300 of them. District is looking into a health screening app that we mentioned earlier called Easy Screen, allowing for self-assessment of staff and students. In order for them to be able to enter the buildings, the cost would be $3,000 purchasing from BOCES. Moving on to curriculum. Teachers have been working over the summer on curriculum writing projects. Those that are completed and have been reviewed and approved by district administration are English 12 IB/Regents, English 10, and the 5th grade maturation curriculum. The 5th grade maturation curriculum will be posted on each elementary school's website so that parents can review and familiarize themselves with this important set of discussion topics so that they are well-versed and informed of what their child will be learning so that they can continue and reinforce those important conversations at home. Parent handbooks K-5 are being updated and will be made available online and in print by request. The district is returning to the elementary science program, now called BOCES 4, which is a hands-on kit-based science program. The district is continuing to work on finalizing plans for professional development days for our staff as they return to school in September. They will begin with a district-wide welcome from Mr. Chang. District administration will deliver important information regarding health and safety protocols and social and emotional wellness. From there, the focus will be building and department-specific needs and collaboration with professional development sessions designed to support teachers in various domains, including, of course, technology. Dr. Pelletieri or Mrs. Rosani, anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you. Perfect report. Far better than I can do. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Farazani will be giving us the report on PPS, social emotional learning, mental health, and student services.
Is it on? Instead.
Yeah,
It's on. Okay, now it's on and facing the wrong way. So the first item we discussed was PPS items. There were 2 resignations on staff in secretarial positions in that field. One person moved to technology and can remain to assist in the training of the new hire. The second resignation becomes effective September 9th. In terms of enrollment, there's been a shifting in numbers in those students entering kindergarten this fall.
8 parents have reported the intention to hold their children back until next year's kindergarten class. 5 families have elected to send their children to St. Agnes Kindergarten. It is unclear if the 8 children held back will return for instruction in kindergarten or first grade next year. The registrar and Dr. Leahy will investigate after the school year has started. The upper grades have experienced a shift as well. 22 incoming 9th graders have left the district for private high school. 6 incoming 7th graders have left for the Latin school. This has not resulted in the collapse of sections of the elementary school level. The core, RISE, and Pathways classes are coming back live, as are inclusion classes in 6th grade through 9th grade, with only a few students opting for full remote. There is construction on the core classroom at the high school. The purchase orders were approved to gain access between the 2 classrooms and create another small alternate instructional space. There are 31 students in 3 classes, 10 to 11 students each, depending on the age grouping, complying with social distancing guidelines. In grades 10, 11, and 12, inclusion students as well as special education students assigned to resource room and consultant teachers will follow the hybrid model. In terms of PPS, our nurses have identified 3 distinct areas in every school. There will be an isolation room for children who will be required to be isolated due to COVID indicators, a room for those with routine medical needs, and a room for children requiring nebulizer treatments, as those could produce droplets which would be harmful to others. The Mental Health Subcommittee report. There are several surveys designed to better inform the school district of social emotional needs of the community in light of the ongoing pandemic from COVID-19. A survey will focus on parents and families to get a feel for the area of anxiety and issues related to health, financial, and emotional ramifications from COVID-19 on families. There will be a family support survey for students K through 5 to determine the specific needs of these children in light of COVID-19. A separate survey is going to be administered in the early fall to students in grades 6 through 12 to assist PPS staff in identifying children at risk. A survey of staff will be administered as well. In the future, there are plans to roll out a mental health baseline assessment. This assessment will be administered in much the same way that we do the Pride survey on an iPad, facilitated by PPS staff, and during the school day. Prior to the assessment, staff will be trained and parents will be made aware. At the high school, due to significant decrease in repeater classes due to low failures, no Regents exams, it appears we will be reducing SE staffing by 1 FTE at the high school. This means we will not have to replace a special education teacher who is resigned at this time. As the numbers shift and the Regents assessments are administered in 2021, it might be likely that the FTE will be required again. Shifting instructional models may also require the restoration of this FTE position as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chang, do we have any recommendations in terms of enrollment for sections that may be needed throughout the district in terms of where enrollment is lying right now?
As of right now, I'm going to ask for a little bit of help on this one. I think we talked a little bit about this. As of right now, I believe there is 1 at Rivers. Am I correct on this? 1 in Riverside?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Mr. Chang.
The question is, do we have any recommendations on enrollment? And I said that there was 1 at Riverside.
For a split,
Yes,
there's 1 grade that is now at 29.
right.
I believe.
That's the incoming first grade, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry, I
think-
don't have the enrollment in front of me.
Yeah, I believe it's Madam President, I believe it's the incoming first grade. It's the incoming first grade at Riverside.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So, I mean, looking at our enrollment, That brings Riverside to 10 sections with that split. Am I correct? Do we not have?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for the committee reports. We're going to move on to the board tour of the buildings. This worked a little bit differently this year. Typically, what we would do is, a day like today, we would all board a bus and move around the district as a group and look at various things within the district with the building principal and custodian that needed maybe fixing or preparation for school opening. And what we did was we decided that each building needed real attention this year, so we split up into small groups, or individual board members met with administrators, the principals, custodians, and we divvied up all the schools, and we made time with the principals to get there and spent a long time really looking through all of these things. So we're going to give you an update on all of the different buildings that we toured, starting with Southside High School, and that was Mrs. Dion.
So this morning, I toured Southside High School with Principal John Murphy and Ms. Wan, as well as our head nurse, Ms. Algerio Vento, the head custodian, Eric, and our PTA presidents. We began, as we began all of our tours, talking about how entrances will be different in 2021. So Mr. Murphy explained how he's using 4 sets of doors, depending on whether the bus students are coming in one individual set, because all bus students will have their temperatures taken before getting on the bus, and the other 3 sets of doors are will have their temperatures taken as they come in. IDs will be checked as they have been since last year. All students will go directly to their first period class. They want to limit as much as possible the loitering in the halls and people around and the density. So he wants everybody going to classes. If anybody walks by the cafeteria, the tables have all been taken out. To limit the density in the cafeteria, they've put in chairs in both cafeterias that are all spread out 6 feet apart, as well as chairs in the auxiliary gym. And all of those spaces will be used for eating, as well as places that students with free periods can go and be. They're also strongly suggesting, I'm sorry, Mr. Chang was also on our on our group tour. Sorry about that. They're recommending that our students also go outside as much as they can, whether it's for eating or for free periods, or just, it's a good place to take your mask break and to just have some time to themselves. The cafeterias, they've set up, all of our cafeterias, whether cafeterias or in the elementary schools, everything will be grab and go this year. So they're setting things up. They have a line set up, an arrow set up, so that we could see how the students would walk in, socially distanced, 6 feet apart, and walk out a different door, and then come around and go to one of the cafeterias. Obviously, because there are desks in the auxiliary gym, phys ed will only have this gym. All of the principals we spoke to are trying to push phys ed outside as much as possible. Every single one said that. So they'll be here, socially distanced, with masks on. As they walk in, there'll be hand sanitizers. All the students will be asked to use their hand sanitizer. They'll have their gym class, and then when they leave, they'll be using their hand sanitizer again. One thing we noticed in all of the buildings, we do not yet have automatic hand sanitizers. I don't know if there's a ETA, Mr. Bertels, for the automatic hand sanitizers?
Yeah, we are still expecting them this week.
Okay, so we're supposed to set them up at main entrances, and then cafeterias and gymnasiums, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, hand sanitizers we saw throughout the high school and other schools. In every single classroom has a smaller hand sanitizer. We visited several classrooms. As I said, half of the desks are out, and all of the desks are spaced 6 feet. If you look in the back, we have 5 of those pods. We're getting 2 more, and from what I understand, they're totally packed. Over the summer, we did a lot of work on the nurse's office. There was a lot of construction done, and now there's several isolation rooms, as well as they've taken storage closets and made them into a nebulizer room, and spaces to adequately space all of our students and staff members if there's a problem. Mr. Murphy made a point of saying that while we do have an open campus, he is not going to allow students to leave in cars together. They are only allowed to leave one at a time. So, and when they return, their temperature will be taken. He has also designed rules for when they exit. So they leave class a few minutes apart. Similarly, we talked about in changing the classes, he's extending the amount of time, and they leave class separately. I think it's 3 minutes apart, so that there's less students in the hallway. Otherwise, you'll see around the whole building, there are signs about masks, signs about not touching faces and coughing and things like that. And there's blue tape everywhere that is 6 feet. So students, staff members, all of us can sort of have visual cues as to how far apart we should be. On another note, today was a freshman orientation day, so we did get to see students. And even underneath their masks, they were smiling. I mean, they seemed really happy to be here. I know Mr. Murphy was really happy to have them here, and it was kind of nice to see children back in our school. So I think the building looks great. I know they've done a lot of work in all our buildings, and it was great to see those kids. So that's the high school.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Hackett?
Yeah?
You're so far away. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm yelling, but I just wanted to tell you that, yes, the enrollment for Riverside, the 2 questions you asked, was the rising first grade, 29 students that will be split in for a total of 10 sections.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on with the board tour of buildings. The middle school, I actually attended with Mr. Chang, our school nurse, Mary Walsh, Mrs. Maria Lasorsa, who's our assistant principal, and Mrs. McGinn, and we were joined by 2 PTA presidents and our head custodian over at the middle school. We did review our capital improvements. Mrs. McGinn pointed out an issue with a possible leak in room 107, which I reported to Mr. Bartels after the tour was complete. We saw the new windows that were installed in the cafeteria and noted some new exhaust fans in bathrooms, to name a few things that were added. We also reviewed all the entry points and all of the bathrooms. For a point of context, every bathroom in the district will have their hand dryers disabled and have paper towel dispensers installed. So part of what we did was go around and make sure that bathrooms were, up to our code. We spoke about the different locations for the hand sanitizing stations as well. They did a really great job at the middle school with blue tape and also helping to create a good flow of traffic for students, but also to have social distancing markers 6 feet apart. Mrs. McGinn and her staff did a really creative and great job creating arrows that have nice quotes on them and are directing people, trying to keep, again, the building upbeat and colorful as it always is, and they did a really great job of making sure it's a place where students can understand the changes. There were also 6th grade tours, family tours going on the day I was there, which was also nice that families were able to get in there and get an idea of the building. One thing that is different for the middle school this year, I know is probably also for the high schools, that there will be no use of lockers. So we had joked and said that would take down the anxiety notch for the 6th graders by about 100%. They will be expected to carry their things with them, so we did not really take a look at those areas, but more of the common spaces. We did did spend a lot of our time looking at the 3 nurses stations in the middle school. They are using their existing nurses station for their regular well nurse area, and they have a nebulizer area which is attached to one of the outdoor exits. So they're going to be doing that. The biggest question mark was where the isolation space was going to be. And we had identified through Mrs. McGinn that the school store area may be adequate enough of a space if cabinetry was removed. So we made a recommendation to have Mrs. Algerio-Vento come and look at the space one more time and make sure that it was an adequate size for an isolation space. For your information, the cafeteria tables were replaced with 51 desks. She showed us the spaces that would be used for our integrated population. 6th grade integrated will be using the music room when they're on their remote schedule. 7th grade will use rooms 205 and 206, and the 8th grade will use the library. We reviewed all the common spaces like the auditorium, which had marked off seats, the gym, and the main office, as well as guidance. I'll take another pass through the building again before the start of school just to see some of the rooms set up as well. So that was the middle school. Any questions? Okay. We'll move on to Covert, and that was Mrs. Barry.
Yes, thank you. Monday morning, Mr. Raynard, Mr. Chang, Mr. Jones, Ms. Algerio-Vento, Ms. Lee President, Dr. Bird, Mr. Jensen, Mr. Coleman, Mr. Monaco, people of Covert. There are currently 6 zones for arrival and dismissal at Covert. Zone 1 will be 1 door. Zone 2 is the storage to the ground area. Zone 3, the side door on the multi-true. Zone 4 is the back door on the multi-true side, also in the middle area. Zone 5 service, Zone 4 is back door, Zone 5 service door inside the area, school, custodial area. Zone 6 is inside the area of the park. So once class has been announced, you will find out Mr. Moore, if there are no classes, you will find out what this is. Temperatures will be checked at each entry point outside the door. That means 2 adults will be at each entry point. While the entire staff will be trained on using the thermal scanner, individual staff members are reviewed for each class at each level. Before the nurses' spaces, the nurses office and market for renovation that was on calendar last summer and completed this summer. It's beautiful, and really happy to see that completed. So that also will be used for visual performance for sickness area. In addition to that, it's for the isolation room and staff location when I remember treatment. Moving on to the conversation, the auditorium door completely designed. The state will be used for small construction, high-speed services, when the auditorium not being moved out. The back wall of the state is also being designed. The auditorium the museum will not serve as cafeteria this year. Students that buy from the already lunch in the morning will be brought to the restaurant food this time. This allows space for people at each part of the cutteries and also allows for small construction. Mr. Reed on the right fill 1 pod with excess furniture and creating another one to store more furniture to clear all the spaces to maximize social distancing. We also saw that the bathroom that was mentioned or with power dispensers in the bathroom, we have installed already. All new dryers have been installed. New floors were also put into the bathroom, boys and girls, and the work is completed. We toured several classrooms, desks were completely distanced, so maybe the arrival of the water. More desks that were expected to be provided. And sanitizer stations will be set up at each classroom door. The hallway will have an entire room for the summer, as well as the main office and principal's office. Classrooms will also be in spaces. Lastly, I just wanted to say that I enjoy always having this school in our district, but the feeling of Covert is palpable. There really is a team there, and it was a pleasure to know all the rooms of the morning, and I wish them all
Kelly, can you just check your mic? We had questions coming in from our people. Just, I think it's working. I don't know if people can hear Kelly in the back. It's green. Okay. Just wanted to check. Thank you. Up next is Hewitt Elementary School, and that was Mrs. Farazani and Mrs. Dan. I believe Mrs. Farazani is giving the report.
Yes. So at Hewitt, the two PTA presidents were on the tour with myself, Dr. Leahy, Mrs. Pike, Mrs. Dion, John Scalisi, and the head nurse and the head custodian, Brian Doris. In terms of the status of capital improvements budgeted for the 2021 year, the air conditioning in the library was replaced, the gym floor was repaired, it was buckling. The gym wall padding is a work in progress. The mats are measured and will be installed this week. The replacement of the cracked concrete pads around the building in the back has been completed. They looked beautiful. And in the front, the slabs will be completed by next week. As far as safety checklist items that we had for board members, there are 6 feet markings in congregation areas and at entrances. The signage was laminated and ready to be hung. We saw that in the auditorium. The nurse's office space, the isolation rooms, and the nurse's office have been updated. The regular health office is now room 7, which was formerly the RISE classroom. It is larger than the prior nurse's office with windows for ventilation and is located near the front entrance for easy pickup of children when they're going home ill. The prior nurse's office is now the isolation room. There are designated areas with appropriate distancing for up to 3 patients at one time. The former faculty room will be utilized if there is a need for any overflow in the isolation rooms. The physical education office will be utilized for nebulizing treatments. There is a window and ventilation present. The room will be ventilated for at least 30 minutes between uses. The classrooms were appropriately spaced, and there was designated spaces for manipulatives to be disinfected at the end of the day. Desk shields will be installed prior to the in-person instruction. Mrs. Pike indicated that there are 2 classrooms that are concerning her in terms of space. The desks are 3 feet apart, but there are 25 children in a first grade classroom and 24 in a third grade classroom. Bathrooms were equipped with hand towels and the dryers were disabled. Hand sanitizing dispensers were located at the entrances. However, these will be replaced, as stated by the other board members and Mr. Bartels, with the hands-free alcohol dispensers. Classrooms have individual pump dispensers with alcohol-based sanitizer in them. Additional items that we observed during the tour, water fountains will be replaced, some of them, with bottle filling capacity to avoid the use of common drinking spouts, and the others will not be used. High-touch surfaces are wiped down repeatedly. Misters were purchased and used to spray surfaces and furniture at the end of the day. Children will also in Hewitt eat in the classroom with box-style lunch offered from the cafeteria. Whenever possible, they will utilize outside space for lunch. The children will line up around the perimeter of the building. They will be utilizing 6 separate entrances to allow for appropriate distancing and temperature checks before entering the building. Those children taking the bus will have their temperature screened before boarding the bus by the matron.
Thank you. Okay, up next is Riverside. That was also Mrs. Dion.
Yes, yesterday afternoon, Ms. Wong and I went to Riverside. We met with Principal Walters, the school nurse, the head custodian, and the PTA presidents. There wasn't a ton of work done at Riverside, but the entire blacktop was replaced, and it looks phenomenal. The fencing is supposed to be replaced soon, Mr. Bartels?
Yes.
So, yeah, they didn't have a date when we went there, but they said it was coming.
It's supposed to be by the end of the month, so
Okay.
it should be shortly.
So, Mr. Walters explained he will, all of the students, the bus students will go in one entrance at the front of the building, get their temperature, they don't need their temperatures checked because they're being checked on the bus, then walk through the gymnasium and head out the back. All of the other students will have their temperatures checked while they're coming onto the blacktop. He designed a whole system where if their temperatures are a little hot because they've been running or standing in the heat, they have a whole area on the side. And most of the schools we went to talked about sort of placing a child on the side, waiting a few minutes, doing another recheck. Throughout the building, all of the hallways have been painted, and they look phenomenal. I'm sorry that everybody didn't get to see them because they really look very nice. We checked through the nurse's office. She has also taken over the phys ed office. I kind of feel bad for the phys ed office people, but I'm just saying. All of them got kicked out of their offices. So now the nurse's office is for the healthy students. The phys ed office is the isolation room. And in between, there's a space that will be the nebulizing room. Several of the rooms under Capitol have been, their floors were replaced, and they also really came out beautifully. Similarly to Covert, their lunch, which is normally served in their gym, will be served in their classrooms. Students will order lunch in the morning, and they will be delivered to the classroom. Much like here, I think everywhere, lunch is grab and go. Students will have a choice of a hot or a cold item, but they'll be ordering it in the morning. Throughout the building, tape has been put on the floor, 6 feet, with 6 feet markers. The signs weren't all up yet because they're still working, but they're getting to it. A lot of the classrooms, they've taken out most of the furniture they didn't need. Their teachers are coming in, I think starting today, to sort of say, I don't need these bookshelves. The push was to take as much out of the classroom as possible, so they're still working on that. All rugs have come up. They're all in the pods, and I think they're still working on pulling out bookcases and things like that. But the building looks great, and they seem very excited to have everybody coming back. So, great.
Thank you. I'm getting messages, and I know we all are, just saying that your microphone may have had a problem, so next time maybe we'll just share mine, just in case, because the people at home couldn't hear some of the Covert reports, so I just wanted to let you know. Not your fault. I did want to mention that Mr. O'Shea could not join us tonight because they moved his son's move-in date to college, so we congratulate him and all the other students going off to college. So I did do the Watson tour for Mr. O'Shea. Mr. Bartels, Dr. Sampino, Tara Algiro-Vento, and I toured Watson with Mrs. Jen Pascarella, our principal, Ray, the head custodian, and one of our Watson PTA presidents. We reviewed some of our capital improvements that were previously agreed to, such as the main office renovation, new bathroom floors in the boys and girls bathrooms, new lighting will be installed in the hallway, and new gym mats will be installed, and a new hot water heater as well. We reviewed the arrival procedures and entry points. They are staggering arrival, and they will have ample staff to conduct temperature checks. We reviewed the 3 locations that the nurses will use for the well area, isolation area, and for the nebulizer. And these 3 areas were located kind of on a triangle, so the nurse has easy access to those. The bathrooms were all checked and had the appropriate dispensers. They also had blue tape installed throughout to create social distancing markers. They did have to move around some classrooms at Watson, specifically kindergarten, which had rooms that used to have tables that cannot accommodate desks, so the kindergarten rooms were moved this year. There was a question at Watson that came up, Robert. We talked about a little bit. It also came up at Wilson about the use of desk guards on flip desks. So we did agree that once they were installed, we would kind of come around and take a pass and just make sure that there's no way for those to fall off the flip desk. So that question was raised at both Watson and Wilson where we were.
Yeah, we'll check those once they're in, and we put them on. We'll do a number of tests to make sure they're not coming off.
Thank you. So that was Watson, and I also had done Wilson with Mr. Chang, Mrs. Rossetto, the nurse Karen Weber, a PTA president, and we joined Mr. Jim Duffy, the building principal, and Derek, our head custodian. We reviewed the new mats that were installed in the gym. We reviewed the portables where OT, PT, speech would be held, and the library and cellar room. Mr. Duffy has 7 entry points. We reviewed all of them where temperature checks would be taken. He has them broken up by grade. You can get the specific areas through him specifically through your correspondence at Wilson. We saw the nurse's office. The nebulizer station is off the main hallway where the AED was located, and the isolation room, which was located now off the main gym, and it also has an exit if any parents need to pick up children from that area. I did mention that I would also go back and look at the rooms with the desks and the guards to make sure that they, were fitting in there. I know Wilson has space issues. We also had talked about everything, the specials we're going to be pushing in. So we did review that as well. And then the last one was the greenhouse for Mrs. Barry. You want to try it?
Can you hear me? So this morning, Mrs. Hackett, Mr. Van Zant, Mr. Chang, PTA Council Presidents, Ms. Travers and Ms. Burns, and myself toured the greenhouse. There was an issue with the air conditioning. It was quite warm upon our arrival this morning. Mr. Van Zant had communicated with district office, Mr. Scalisi, about having it repaired, and I think that was in the works as far as when we left. The discussions were going on in terms of repairing that. There has been a HEPA filter, or will be one, being installed, as was mentioned earlier in Ms. Dion's report. At least one of those will be going to the greenhouse. Temperatures will be checked before students enter the space. We identified an isolation area off the side of the entrance space so that the students, if they do in fact have a temperature, they can go into the isolation room before entering the main learning space of the greenhouse. They're awaiting arrival of thermometers and PPE equipment and sanitizing stations. Bathrooms, we checked, they had the paper towel dispensers. We discussed the potential need for desk guards for the socially distanced desks in the main learning spaces. And Wi-Fi issue was brought up, but I think the upgrades, actually I know because I checked with Dr. Pelletieri, the upgrades that I spoke about earlier in the curriculum committee minutes will apply to all of our campuses, including the greenhouse, of course. And that's all I have for the greenhouse. Do you want me to circle back to Covert a little bit, or?
Maybe just hit some of the touch points for the people who missed it.
Sure. Don't want to leave the Covert family out. Circling back to Covert, there are 6 entry points for arrival and dismissal, and you'll be getting that information in terms of which zone your child has been assigned to once classes are announced by Mr. Amar. Temperatures will be checked at each of those entry points outside of the building. There will be a chief person. All staff will be trained, but there will be a chief person assigned to each class at each zone upon arrival to check temperatures. We toured the nurse's office, and the renovation that was scheduled for last summer but wasn't able to be finished last summer was finished this past summer, and it looks beautiful. That will serve as the main nurse's office. And we also saw the separate isolation room and the room for nebulizer treatment when needed. The common spaces, just the main upgrades, the auditorium floor was replaced, the stage wall was painted, and the gymnasium will not serve as a cafeteria. Students that buy lunch, like Ms. Dion mentioned at Riverside, will be ordering lunch in the morning and will be brought to their classroom at the appropriate time, which allows space for physical education classes on inclement weather days, also allows for small group instruction when needed. I also mentioned that there was one pod filled already at Covert, and Mr. Amar is awaiting a separate pod to arrive so that he can continue to store the furniture that was removed to maximize social distancing. Bathrooms were updated. There were new floors put in each of the bathrooms for the students, and that work has already been completed. We toured several classrooms, and they're just awaiting the arrival of the desk guards, and the hand sanitizer stations will be set up. Signage, I don't think I mentioned this before, but signage is done. Mr. Amar is in the process of setting that up as well. And lastly, I just said thank you to the team at Covert. It really is a team, and it was a pleasure to tour. Hopefully you heard me this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for redoing it. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to move on to our policies and superintendent regulations section. So we have 3 different policies and forms that are in a stage 1, a stage 2, and a stage 3. We're going to go through all of those and then open the mic at the end of this portion for any questions or comments regarding any of the policies. So we're going to start, I'd mentioned earlier in my policy committee report that we're in stage 1 on 7318, which is the student use of district-owned mobile devices, and the committee had reviewed that and really went through making sure that anything that had said mobile devices was changed to computing devices. And there was one section where instead of saying that students were encouraged to set and convey standards, we said that they were expected to do that. Those were the biggest changes in the policy. So I'll ask if there's any questions from board members regarding 7318.
Wasn't really sure. It kind of seemed to be outside of the rest of the policy. So the policy, as I'm reading it, it's really pertaining to district-owned devices. And then the second to last paragraph before the notification on the second page, it's that paragraph that starts, despite the existence of district policy, regulations, and guidelines, it's virtually impossible to complete. And it just kind of hangs there, in my opinion. I don't know, is that then referred back to the code of conduct? Or, because everything else is referring to district-owned, and then that one kind of goes to, as I'm reading it, student-owned. So in other words, their cell phone or something that they're accessing from home, which is not district-owned.
You're talking about the section where it switches from student-owned to district-owned.
Yeah, it's the second to last paragraph. It just seems to not fit with the rest of the,
Right.
I think I understand the intent, but then in cases such as that, I know that the code of conduct is referred to at the bottom of the policy. Is that, are we saying that if the student is accessing content or material from their home off of school premises, is that, are we still saying it's district-owned, or are we saying it's student-owned? That's just a point of clarification for me.
We would think that, I think that would be more of district-owned, but there may be times where it is, because you're talking about access, right, to, so whatever device that they have on, it could be student-owned. So I think that might be the piece that they're trying to get in on that specific one.
Okay. It just kind of seemed like a statement more than kind of hung out there for me when I was reading it, but thank you for.
I think it's kind of a statement to just alert folks and parents that, look, despite our best efforts, let's make sure that we are on our youngsters when they are on devices for school, whether it be our device or their own.
Thank you.
I mean, we could clarify that as well, whether, like, to our point, whether it is district-owned or student-owned. Maybe that would be the.
Well, maybe that's the intent. It wasn't clear when I was reading it. That's. Thank you.
Any other questions about 7318?
No.
Okay, so we'll move that one forward then to stage 2, if everybody is comfortable with that? Okay, thank you. Then we move on to the Form 7318F, and this is the computing device agreement. As I mentioned earlier, the only change that we looked at was changing the word iPad to mobile device, computing device, because we knew that we were going to start using Chromebooks in the near future, so that was really the only change I remember us making there. Any questions?
No.
No.
Okay, so if no objections, we'll also move that one to stage 2. Okay. We are in stage 2 already for 5676, and that's the privacy and security for student, teacher, and principal data. Again, I mentioned earlier some of the changes. We had been waiting for language from BOCES. Dr. Pelletier, do you want to just explain why we accepted the language from BOCES and how we're covered under their agreement?
Certainly, BOCES has a strong confidentiality agreement so that every purchase we make through BOCES, we get aid on, which is a smart thing to do. And then we are backed up by their strong confidentiality agreement as well, so we get their protections on top of the savings that we get. So we decided or felt it was best to go ahead with this BOCES agreement as it is.
Does that also apply to the CLIC-WRAP agreements? I know we were looking for language on that as well to see if we were going to accept these yellow changes as on that. particular portion also?
That's correct.
Okay. As I mentioned also earlier, we had made some changes to make sure people understand that they cannot access any student data, but just their own students' data as parents. Were there any other questions from board members about 5676?
No.
Okay, if no objections, we'll move that to stage 3. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. On the form that was associated with 5676, it was the Bill of Rights. The only change we made to that was really putting a header on top of it that made it look like a Rockville Center School District policy, taking the data from New York State Education Department. It's the Bill of Rights for data privacy and security. That's the only change that was made. Any questions?
No.
Okay. So if okay and no objections, we'll move that also to stage 3. Okay, we're in stage 3 right now of policy 6480. We had left it at stage 3 from the last meeting, changed this meeting to be a regular meeting to make sure that we could allow for public comment. We had made some changes during the last meeting, and then there were a few suggested changes that came out of the Athletics Advisory Committee. So any questions on 6480?
I have a question. In terms of the paragraph with coaching, where it says, which will include objective, selective criteria will be applied, where are the regulations in terms of that? If I'm going to apply for a position as a coach, I would like to know what the regulations are and the parameters are surrounding it. And it shouldn't be arbitrary from sport to sport or from a particular coach to another coach. Everyone should be on the same page in terms of what's allowed and what's permitted and what's not.
We spoke about this in the Athletics Advisory Committee, and I know Carol Rossetto's here. What we ended up talking about extensively through committee was how it's such a case-by-case scenario because so many sports are different. They might find themselves in different scenarios, but Carol had some kind of criteria she was going to use to determine what would happen next, and we did talk through some of those things. Carol, I don't know if you want to join us and talk through some of those things. We added this line to let people know that there would be an objective criteria in place.
So again, basically, depending on what the scenario is, all of these possible criteria could be applied. So one is the coach may be removed completely from the tryout process. One could be additional sports-specific qualified staff might be appointed to be part of the team selection process. I may go to all or some of the tryout days to observe participants. Additional sports-specific qualified staff might be appointed to specifically observe the students that may be on both teams. I would look to see if they were previously selected to the varsity team before prior outside coaching teams. And then basically, again, go by that. So you asked if, how would the coaches know? When a coach, on the new application process, there is going to be a signature, once this policy is approved, there's going to be a signature section saying that, do you fulfill all the requirements of this policy? The policy will be sent to every coach upon application, and then there's going to be a discussion. So if a coach at that point thinks that they have to fill out this form, then we're going to have a thorough discussion, and they'll know exactly what criteria meets their specific situation.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions on 6480?
No.
Okay. I said after we get through the policies, we're going to open the mic. So we're going to go to the form, which is 6480F. We had made some changes there as well. We had just added on the top of them that they would be in accordance with 6480, so that anybody knew who, when they were filling out this form, that they were bound to the wording of the policy. We added principal signature to the tutoring policy, director of art signature to the music, and the coaching one, we had previously removed some of the language that was at the top to make them consistent. One of the board members had asked that all of the forms were consistent. Any questions about 6480F?
Under tutoring, under location where services will be provided, it's still reading the student is not a member of my regularly assigned classes or assigned to any of my regularly scheduled classes during the next semester. I know in a previous session, we had revised the policy, the wording semester, so I think we have to be consistent with the form and the policy.
Yep, I agree. We had defined what the school year was, not the semester.
Yeah.
So that should match. Jackie, could you make that change for us, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on 6480F?
The music has the same wording, so I don't know what
Did we define the school year for the music policy? Let me take a quick peek.
Yeah, let me go back. I just know.
I gotta go back.
Just a typo.
Yes.
It says school year.
School year, Jackie, please, for music and tutoring on the form.
Thank you. Sorry.
Carol?
Number 6 under coaches, I think it should say student-athletes.
That's on the policy.
That's on, I'm sorry, yeah, that's on the policy.
I'm sorry, so under
Should
number
say-
6?
Right now, it says students/space athletes. It should say student-athletes.
Okay. All set? Okay, so we're going to open up the microphone. You're going to come up one at a time if you're in the gym first. Again, you must state your name and your address before you can make your comment.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board, and residents. My name is Rob Griffo at 16 Norcross Street in Rockville Center. I'm a member of the RVC Athletics Advisory Committee. I'd like to use this time to give a summary and read a statement of our objectives and our outcomes during this process. The RVC Athletic Advisory Committee was established to assist the district athletic director in making recommendations to the Board of Education on district policies that pertain to athletics. The committee consists of 4 RVC community members, which I have one of, 4 district coaches, 2 booster club presidents, 1 middle school principal, 1 high school principal, 2 Board of Ed members, and the director of athletics. Beginning February of 2020, the committee has met twice in person and 5 times remotely. During these meetings, the committee was tasked to make recommendations on Policy 6480 and Form 6480F. When making recommendations, the committee viewed it from the perspective of what is best for all teams, all coaches, and athletes, all athletes. Committee members weighed all pros and cons with each recommendation and tried to look at it from every point of view. Over the last couple of months, there have been ongoing questions and concerns about Policy 6480, and today the committee would like to clarify some of what went into our recommendations. The committee began by recognizing the importance of distinguishing the difference in roles between a coach who wants to privately train players individually or in a small group setting, B, a coach who is hired by an outside organization to direct or run a sports-themed open enrollment camp or clinic, and C, a coach who is hired by an outside organization to coach a travel or AAU team. Our sole goal was to make specific recommendations that set clear guidelines for each of these separate roles listed above in an effort to eliminate gray areas that were perceived in the present policy. After many discussions, the committee members were in full agreement that a district coach should not be permitted to train any age-eligible student or students for direct compensation. B, the committee felt that sports clinics and camps would not be a conflict because they are 1, open to anyone no matter where they live, 2, not held during the season, and 3, are short-term. In an effort to ensure transparency, the committee recommended that coaches be required to inform the Director of Athletics of any RVC students enrolled in their clinic or camp as soon as they are given their rosters. The committee felt that camps and clinics are not only beneficial to the athlete, but allow coaches to further develop his or her craft and become a better coach. Another point of discussion was that the committee felt that the district should not have the right to prevent coaches from using their area of expertise to earn compensation outside of the school day. The committee agreed that if a coach is hired by an outside organization to coach a travel team that contains any RVC athletes, she will be required to fill out Form 6480F3 and an alternative selection process, which includes objective selective criteria, will be determined by the Director of Athletics and the Superintendent. The athletic director explained to the committee that since each sport and each scenario has a potential to be very different, the following items are potential actions that would be taken into consideration. 1, the coach appointed to be a part of the team selection, the coach might be removed from the selection process. 2, additional sport-specific qualified staff might be appointed as part of the selection process. 3, the athletic director may attend part or all of the team selection process. 4, additional sport-specific qualified staff might be appointed to specifically assess the athletes who are on both teams. And 5, the decision would take into account whether the athletes on travel team were already selected for the varsity team in prior years. And 6, the requirement of additional documented tryout criteria might be requested. The committee felt this would ensure a fair selection process. The committee trusts the integrity of the individuals and the district has hired as their coaches. RVC Athletics has been an example of excellence for decades and continues to be a program that other districts strive for. The RVC Athletics Advisory Committee stands by policy 6480 and 6480F3 as written, as it values the integrity of the community, of district administration, and of our athletes and its coaches. Thank you for this opportunity. This was written by the RVC Athletic Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Anybody else that'd like to come from the gym to the microphone about any of the policies put out? If there's anybody coming from the auditorium, Sue Flanagan, I don't know if you have anybody coming down the hallway? Okay, thank you. We're anxiously awaiting your arrival.
It took a while because I was relegated to the auditorium. Kieran Conlon, can everyone hear me? 63 Broadway, Rockville Center. Good evening. I'm here because almost a year ago I came before this board and the superintendent and advised them that we had a cancer in our community, and specifically with regard to the athletic program and what I believe to be a clear conflict of interest and even in appearance a pay-to-play atmosphere with our high school athletics. As many of you here know from personal experience, when there's a severe disease like cancer, and it's ignored, it continues to grow. It continues to get worse, and sometimes it creates irreparable damage. Unfortunately, in such cases, when you finally face the problem and you roll up your sleeves to address it, some of the decisions you have to make are extremely painful and require significant sacrifice. There can be no cure if we don't acknowledge that there's a problem. In order to address this issue, I'm talking about specific conflicts and even the appearance of a pay-to-play standard that no one can deny exists. We have to make some hard choices. Not everyone's going to like these necessary changes, but for the good of the students and the community, they must be made. I had some suspicions that we might have been drifting off course when a couple of months ago I heard some statements at one of the board meetings that, if we keep going like this, we won't have any good coaches. Well, I'm here to say that while I know that sentiment has been repeated by families and by committee members, nothing could be farther from the truth. That statement plays on the fears of some of the families, and specifically the families that are very much involved in athletics. If we allow ourselves to be beholden to an individual out of fear, we betray our mission statement as a school district. Nowhere in this policy, with regard to coaching, are the interests of the student the actual priority. What is evident is that this policy acknowledges and approves of behavior that runs contrary to actually the law in the state of New York as it relates to conflicts of interest. And I don't profess to be an expert on the law, even though I am a lawyer with respect to general municipal law, and I know you have learned counsel with regard to that. I believe this policy falls short and actually creates significant problems. What we really have here is a waiver policy. The biggest concern I have is that this policy puts a big bullseye on the back of the school district and this board if it's implemented. I don't want to get into the weeds of what we're talking about here, but what I'm really saying is that this policy in and of itself acknowledges that there's a conflict, that there's a problem with what's going on with coaching right now, and it allows a process by which we will approve it. We're, in essence, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole because we have an underlying general municipal law that does not allow this conduct. We must understand that certain conflicts can't be waived. What is also true, that we can't shift the responsibility from the individual actor, such as a coach, to the district and its administration by allowing this consent. Anyone who ratifies a coach's action or involvement in a situation that clearly creates a conflict would herself become complicit in the violation of law. So I think what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for bigger problems with this policy. Where do we go wrong? To begin with, I think there was an issue as it relates to what the intent of this athletic committee was. I sat out there and I heard some statements read, and clearly the issue was a concern for allowing coaches to make a livelihood outside of their teaching salary and their stipend that they may receive, and I don't have details on that. But I go back to that initial statement. We need to decide who we are as a school district and as what our priorities are with respect to our athletic program. The mere act of ratifying conduct, such as we're discussing in this policy, will not release the district from liability and will actually create liability for this board and the school district. As clearly set forth in the general municipal law, the conflict that we're talking about here can't be waived. So to have this ratification and this process where we're going to go down on a case-by-case basis is really just an effort to circumvent what is the existing law in the state of New York. So my question to the board is this. In light of the discourse that we're dealing with here, and the obvious vested interest of certain groups and faculty, and I understand this is a financial issue for many staff who've come to rely on this additional income. Why doesn't the board, and I will put this to you, and I don't know if you're going to have an answer now, but why doesn't the board seek the guidance from, or like an advisory opinion from an outside agency such as the state's Division on Local Government and School Accountability? Now, if you don't know what that organization is, I think you can figure it out by the title, right? It's a resource that you can use when we have this type of impasse, and send this policy to them and send them the facts that brought this policy to bear and say, does this comply with the general municipal law, specifically, and I want everyone to read it, 805A. And that is the conflicts law on the books that puts everyone here on notice that we can't waive this conflict, so we have to address it. So my suggestion is that, and I'd like a response, if not tonight, if it hasn't been done already. If it has, then I'd really appreciate being informed of that. Thank you. And I apologize for running over, Tara.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to answer you in the sense of that we did have our lawyers vet this policy. They had done it publicly at our meeting. It's not a brand-new policy. It's not something created because of a situation, but our lawyers did vet this policy with us, so I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
I'd strongly urge this board to seek the opinion of the comptroller on this issue, because most of the historical opinions from the Attorney General flow through that agency and may have, in light of what I've researched, different opinions than potentially the actual hired counsel of the school district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Lawrence Ferrazzani, 131 Dartmouth Street here in Rockville Center. So we're at the end of a long year, a long and emotional year. And you presented, after the year, a conflict of interest policy. A policy by its terms, by the fact that we've gone through the year that we've spent, that reflects a fundamental understanding that a public school district should be protecting against conflict of interest. Indeed, the policy itself recognizes that in the first two components. It says quite clearly, teachers may not receive compensation from students in their class or from students that will be in their classes. It says that music instructors may not receive direct compensation from students that they are providing instruction to or that they may provide instruction to. Yet, to my knowledge, we have not had conflicts with teachers receiving compensation for grades or music instructors receiving compensation for parts. We're here after the long year because of a coaching conflict of interest issue. And incredibly, the policy that you've submitted reflects a ban on teachers from receiving compensation directly for providing academic instruction and music instructors, but it provides a fundamental permission, authorization for coaches to receive compensation from students that they will put on their teams. That's astounding. This is the only area where we've spent the last year discussing conflicts, not only in the girls' programs, but in boys' programs. You have heard testimony from village taxpayers and parents. You've received letters from students and parents discussing how this either actual or perceived conflict of interest has adversely affected their high school experience. You've heard from the head of Rockville Center's soccer program, who testified or spoke to this board about a year ago and said, yes, there's a conflict. Kids are leaving Rockville Center to go to East Meadow because they believe, rightly or wrongly, that they need to go to East Meadow to be placed on the Rockville Center High School team. It's not a perception, it was an actual issue. And yet after a year, you have taken a policy that was already watered down, and you've watered it down further to provide a blanket authorization for coaches to continue to do so. What you did was a classic political hack move, which is we'll send it to a committee. We'll appoint the members of the committee, and you heard from Mr. Griffo.
Please do not mention anybody else's name. Thank you. I asked for that earlier.
He testified here or provided a statement.
We're not going to mention other people's names. Thank you.
You heard from the committee member who described to you the members of the committee that I believe you, President Hackett, appointed.
No, that's not correct.
Who appointed the members of the committee?
The entire board received applications through the district clerk, and the entire board, and I have members of the board sitting here that they can also say that they looked through every application, and the board as a whole chose the members of the committee. We've already addressed that in a previous meeting.
Okay. I'm going to try to make sure that my voice and my words actually remain on the recording this time, so I'll do what I can. The members on the committee, as described by the individual who preceded me at this microphone, described the committee as coaches, boosters, committee members. And it was very telling how that committee member described what was the mission of the committee. What is best for the teams, the coaches, and the athletes. And I believe he told the truth. That was the order that this committee took a look at as far as priorities. Somehow the committee decided that if there's individual training, that was a problem. So we're going to treat that differently. But if a coach in the district also coaches a clinic or a travel team, somehow they want to carve out that as being not a risk to either pay to play or a conflict of interest. It's absurd. To justify that, the quote from the individual who was preceded me, that the district, we decided as a committee, we don't have the right to block our coaches from earning money outside of their day, which I assume means the teachers who also work as coaches. Why not? This committee, this school board, is charged with representing the interests of the students, the taxpayers, and the parents. The teachers have their own union, who represents their interests. Why not, like exists in virtually every other environment, is not the deal. If you want to coach for Rockville Center, we're paying you. We give you a stipend. We pay you competitively. The deal is you coach our students. You don't provide either the perception or actual advantage for students that either have the ability or the desire to pay you outside of the district. The person that was on the committee said that these camps are open to anyone. They're not held during season. These camps, these travel teams, as you've heard over the course of the year, are incredibly significant revenue generators. There is cash going to coaches, paid for by parents of students to belong to these outside teams. Why does this committee not say, we represent the taxpayers of this district, we represent the students? Because what I did not hear from the committee, and what I have not heard over the past year, is how does this help our students to allow a coach to trade his Rockville Center coaching position to be able to earn compensation outside? How does that help our students? We heard from the committee, this helps the coach develop. Develop on your own time. If you believe you're a great coach and kids are going to go to you on your own, go coach for one of the countless travel teams, the clinics, the camps. Just don't coach our kids. I heard from the union leader during prior meetings, you got to watch morale. When was the last time a Rockville Center teacher, left for reasons other than retirement or discipline? We don't have a morale problem. What you do have, and what has been documented over the past year, is you have thrown this community into turmoil. You have had kids that made the team have their achievements challenged and questioned. You had kids that did not make the team. You've heard from juniors and seniors in the girls' soccer program. You've heard from the boys' lacrosse program. You've heard from the basketball program. Why are we going through this as a community? To what benefit? How does this benefit the students? How does this benefit the parents? And how does this benefit the taxpayers? The answer is it doesn't. It benefits the union and the teachers, the very few who chose to trade their position at Rockville Center to earn outside income, and that's reprehensible. I'm going to finish by quoting you, Mr. Chang. At the beginning of the meeting today, you said something that I thought was beautiful, and which I hope is true. You said that as you've gone through the process of trying to figure out how to bring these students back to Rockville Center, something beautiful at Rockville Center is that we ensure access to all. The policy that's been presented here today defeats that purpose. It ensures that only students whose parents are able or willing to pay for this pay-to-play corruption will join certain teams. It ensures that you'll have certain teams that won't even staff a full roster, that you'll have teams where kids that are juniors or seniors don't play high school sports. And for what benefit? The union. This board is going to have many challenges over the next year we all are aware of. There's going to be economic challenges. We heard about the cut in state aid. There will be several more battles where you're going to have to make choices about what does this board represent, the parents and students, and whose interests will you vote for. You all will be called on to vote on this policy. I implore you all to vote it down and to stand up for the students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, do we have anyone to keep in time? At this point, okay.
How you doing? John Dykes, 20 Wellesley Road. Been coming to these meetings for about the last year, exactly. Actually, one of the biggest points I want to see, I was watching one of the virtual meetings, and we're discussing this policy, and there's some debate, and someone mentioned that this policy wasn't to hurt anyone. Well, I agree with you. It's not to hurt anyone. It's to protect people, protect our students. We're not looking to hurt anyone. There are hundreds of thousands of kids that play sports in Long Island. I think there were 35 kids that tried out for Rockville Center. If you need to make money from those 35 kids, you don't belong here. I'm sorry. People make choices in life. You can say, oh, I was given this team. I was told to take this team. There's a choice. You need to make money somewhere on the side. And it's not really about the money. I'm sure it's more about the passion of playing, but you can't coach. You can't coach a team outside of the Rockville Center School District and take money from Rockville. You're double dipping. And first of all, once you put money into a situation, it changes it. I'm not saying anything started that way, but that's the way it ended. Things were not right. This policy, I was reading it today, and there's some good parts of it. I just do not get the first part. It says you cannot receive compensation as a coach in Rockville Center School District at any time during the year, and send semi-private trained people. But number two is totally opposite of what number one says. If you're coaching a team, you're making money from those people, and it provides a conflict of interest. And and saying that you signed some piece of paper that says, "Oh, yes, I'm training these people, and I'm very honest." You know what? In a perfect world, you would be. But you know what? It's one bad apple that messes up for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Nicole Dyax, 20 Wellesley Road. I had to improvise because everybody basically said what I was going to say. All I wanted to know is I think you're all doing a fabulous job up there, and I wanted to reward you by giving you a gift of money, a few $100s apiece. Am I allowed to come and hand you money? Because I'd like to thank you for your duties as board members. Are you able to accept this?
Please don't approach with money.
All I'm trying to say is, you know money is messy. It makes everything messy. That's all I'm trying to say. If you understand it as members that you're not allowed to accept it, what is the difference if you're trying out for a team and that student pays that person? That's all I'm saying. That's it. How is that not a conflict? Money makes everything messy. Period.
Thank you.
I just want to say I'm going to miss you terribly. I thought you were fabulous and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Would anybody else like to speak on policy 6480 or 6480F?
Hi, I'm Karen Parker, 37 Southard, and I just felt like I needed to stand up as another person that was on the committee, just to clear up a few things that I've just heard. First of all, I think it's a misconception to assume that the form and this policy is a blanket okay for anything goes. That was not the intent, that's not the way it's written, and that isn't the way that it should be perceived. It does start out saying, you know, we don't want coaches taking direct payment from students, but we also had to address all of the different types of scenarios there could be where students and student athletes and coaches might come into contact with each other. So therefore the form, and therefore the case-by-case, vetting with June and with Carol, as far as figuring out each scenario and how each one should be approached. That doesn't mean that everything is going to get approved, absolutely not. But I also wanted to address a few other things that I heard tonight from some of the other speakers at the microphone, that saying we're never going to get good coaches is a fear tactic. And again, I don't think that should be viewed that way either. I think what people who feel that way are trying to say is that the types of coaches who are the coaches who are coaching outside and who are not only benefiting the kids who are playing these sports, but who are also honing their own skill as coaches, are the caliber coaches that we want. And when you want to ask, what do our athletes deserve? What do our student athletes deserve? They deserve the highest caliber of coaches that we can afford them while they're here at Southside. And, as far as the talk of the teachers supplementing their income, and, I hate to tell you, but they're not getting rich by coaching a team outside of the high school. The majority of these coaches are coaching for the love of the game. I believe when they're coaching outside and when they're coaching inside the school. And for me, it all goes back to the integrity of these coaches. The staff at the school spends, more hours with your kids than you do probably. And if we don't trust the integrity of the staff members and the coaches and the teachers that we are hiring and that we are allowing to work with our children for all these hours, then that's a problem. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other, I'm sorry, I choked on the water. Any other questions or comments? Switch me.
I don't have any about policy. I do have others, though, later. I'm sorry? For later. Yeah.
For opportunity for visitors?
Yes.
Okay. So, like I mentioned earlier, this policy is in stage 3. If there are any objections from board members of moving it forward for approval for the next meeting, you can let us know now.
I have objected to moving forward, as I see everything that we have going on, moving forward, and getting back into school, and first, we're having a lot of time for microphones, and we now have a lot of time for necessary. I don't think that it's appropriate norm to put it forward. I think a lot of issues have been brought to the attention of the public with regard to the policy. I think the first 2 portions of the policy as stated are a moratorium on doing things that are complex, and then they provide for options in terms of something else. If you replace the word coach or teacher in the first part, and you replace class with team, in our district. We give the coaches the first right of refusal in our district. So they have the right first, so we can leave for everybody else to decide if they want to coach or not. We give them that right. And the way this policy is, the second portion with regard to coaching is simply a level thing. And I don't think the coaches changes anything that is wrong with the policy sector. And I think that in terms of the discipline down to allow somebody to make a case-by-case decision is allowing for more conflict and more issues to be brought to this point from teachers who will come back and say, how come he was allowed to coach and he only had 5 kids on his practice team that are also on the team, and somebody coming back and saying, I had 2, and the decision was different. It just needs an entire vast openness for people who have kids, and I don't understand why we're going forward with that. In addition, Ms. Roche, as you mentioned before, could not be present because it was done to college, and he has been vocal as well. Probably would want to be here when it's being decided. Because once it gets to stage 4, there is no more public comment, there is no more changing it, it's simply for the school. I think what one of the speakers said with regard to going diverse to the other big law should be looked into. I think we have an obligation as a board to do that, and I don't think the policy should be moved forward. I don't think that the children's health center, I think it has one hundred and that's a lot of coaches that we pay coach here to make money from traveling on the outside.
Okay, thank you.
President Hackett, I do have one question, one comment.
Go ahead, Mrs. Wong.
Okay, it's, Dear Mr. Chang and RBC Board of Education, last year I organized and paid for a large portion of week-long college tour for a group of girls from Long Island. Months later, to hear parents in your district accuse these same kids of going away all summer with the assistant soccer coach from your high school was absolutely horrible. No coach from Southside was involved in planning, attended, or was in any way involved in this week-long tour. In fact, it was my wife and friend who were the chaperones. I would request an apology to this group of kids and a retracted statement about them being away with any coaches from your district. And this is from Robert Joya.
Thank you. Any other objections from board members on moving the policy forward to be approved at the next meeting, to be voted on for approval at the next meeting?
No. No, I'm comfortable moving it. There is a possibility for comment at our next meeting, and I am comfortable, as I said last time, moving this forward at this point.
I'm comfortable as well, so we'll move it forward for approval at the next meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on for opportunity for superintendent. Mr. Chang?
Madam President, I just wanted to take the opportunity to, could everyone hear me again? I got to talk into this thing. I'd just like to take the opportunity, I haven't worked with Chris very long, but I do think, is that me every time is that rumbling? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Could you, I will try to speak at this level, and hopefully it won't ring. I'll try to keep it really loud if I can. Yeah. So I will try my best as is. Please indulge me. So I'd like to take this opportunity to just talk about a member of my cabinet who literally just became my cabinet. As we all know, I put out notice that Chris will be leaving us to take on his own position as superintendent. And I just wanted to recognize him for all the hard work, at least in the 2 months that we've worked together. Rockville Center is losing someone that's extremely dedicated and cares about their kids. I could tell you within the time that I've been able to just sit with him, talk through his mindset, his core value, things that he wanted to try to accomplish and continues to accomplish here at Rockville Center are going to be near and dear to his heart. As I've grown fond of Chris within a very short time, I've been able to work with Dr. Pelletieri in terms of planning, in terms of putting things together as professional development, thinking bigger thoughts about some of the things that we wanted to try to accomplish. And I think he's going to go on to do some really good things. And I just wanted to acknowledge him for all the years that he's put in to your children, to those graduates, and to all the people in Rockville Center. That's all I got.
Thank you. We're going to move on to opportunity for board members. Mrs. Dion?
Well, I think I'm going to have to, can you guys hear me? Thank you. I will echo what Mr. Chang just said, Dr. Pelletieri. It is with incredible mixed emotions that I kind of say goodbye to you. Sachem is an incredibly fortunate district. You've been a tremendous asset to our district, and I consider you a really good friend. You've paved the way and led the charge in initiatives in curriculum and technology. You were an early adopter pushing for change and growth within Rockville Center. Some things worked, some things didn't, but we kept pushing forward. I got to know you best when we worked together on the Ed Foundation. Above everything, I've always appreciated your openness, your ability to be convinced of opinions differing from your own. I think I can say we will all miss you and your humor. We openly recognize that Jackie liked you best and will never have rainbow cookies again because she only bought them for you. I wish you all the best. I will not say goodbye, though, because I finally get to be one of those people that go to convention and walk into a seminar being led by somebody who's like a rock star, and I get to lean over and say, like, that's Chris Pelletieri, and he was in Rockville Center first. So thank you for all you have done. There's lots of thanks to go around besides to Dr. Pelletieri. We have tasked Mr. Chang and his entire administration with something that we thought was impossible, which was opening our schools come September. I remember being a parent of an incoming 9th grader, and this building seemed unbelievably vast, and I thought my son would just get lost. And that was back when rooms only had 3 digits and made sense, and now I still don't know where anything is here. Sorry, Mr. Murphy, if you're watching. But the thing that was the solace was, like, I didn't have to worry because all of this had been done before, and now we come to 2021, and this has not been done before. So instead of just having the parents of our incoming 9th graders or 6th graders, we have parents of all our students and our teachers and our staff members saying, how do we do this? And we don't have all the answers because we don't have all the questions, but we have a path. And we have great people working their very best. They've worked all summer. We've sat in countless Zoom meetings with them. I am so impressed by all the work that they've done to get us to this point, and all the work that they continue to do. And it's everyone here, our administrators, our teachers, our staff, our custodians, our parents, created and implementing these plans to ensure that each and every one of our children are educated. We will be challenged, we know that. We look around, anybody who has a college student and says, like, they were going to college and now they're sitting in a dorm room and they're taking their courses, know that there'll be challenges. But we will address them and we will move forward. And as Mrs. Pike told us on the Hewitt walkthrough, we will just call audibles, because moving forward is the only way we can go. Everyone in this room, everyone at these tables, all of us are committed to educating our children, each and every single one of them. As Mr. Chang said when he came in July, safety is our #1 priority for both our students and our staff. Our mission is to educate every child. So I want to thank everyone for their Zooms. I want to thank everyone for everything that they're doing to prepare for the first day of school. It may look different than other first days, but much will be the same. It is a new beginning. I'm excited, I'm hopeful, and I think we're really ready for the challenge. We have good days, we'll have struggling days, but I look forward to filling the classrooms again, to hearing the chatter, to seeing those smiling faces that I saw this morning. So stay tuned, because good things are happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Farazani?
Can you guys hear me now? I want to reiterate what everyone has said about my congratulations to Chris and how much we will miss him. I worked with you on PTA council and in the PTAs for years, and you were always wonderful in coming in and explaining the intricacies of curriculum and how we could go back to our units and explain to the parents why we were changing things, what we were doing, how it was affecting all of the children, and for that I thank you. Simplifying things that, as a non-educator, you're great at doing that, and you're going to be an asset anywhere you go, and I wish you the best of luck. I want to thank everyone who came to the podium. It is not easy to get up in front of a room full of people and express what you're passionate about. It doesn't matter what side you're on, whether we agree or we disagree. I think it's important that the taxpayers of this community get up and express how they feel and have a voice. And I'm very happy that a lot of people sent us letters. I've read each and every one of your letters. We have worked tirelessly on different committees throughout, trying to bring kids back into school in the safest way possible. We have followed the guidance of the Department of Health, of the CDC, of the New York State Education Department, and the guidance of the governor. We've done what we can under those restrictions to bring kids back. We hear everything that you said, and we're trying our best. So I thank you as a community for your support, and encourage you to continue to speak to us and have dialogue at these open meetings. It's very important that we hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrett?
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Leahy and her staff for an incredibly successful summer program which served our students safely and effectively, and in many ways helped inform our reopening discussions as they progress through this summer. Thank you to Dr. Pelletieri and Mr. Anderson and their teams for working hard to ensure that we will be able to successfully employ our reopening plans both on our campuses and remotely. Thank you to Mr. Chang, Dr. Pelletieri, Mr. Bartels, Dr. Leahy, all the district administrators and staff, our principals, all of our teachers, support staff, clerical, technology, custodial, buildings and grounds, and of course, the members of our community for working so hard over this summer to get us poised to reopen our schools safely and welcome our students back. Dr. Pelletieri, as everyone has mentioned, I can't thank you enough for all that you have done for the students and staff of our community. On a personal note, I'll never forget my first board meeting. Well, we had all these papers at the time, and you were trying to help me and point things out, and it is really overwhelming when you come to your first meeting, and I was lucky enough to be sitting next to you, and I'll never forget that. Your kindness is boundless, and the students in this district have been so blessed by your presence here over the last 12 years. It's just such a testament to you and your character that students would come, my students would come, my children would come home and say, oh, Dr. Pelletieri was in the school today, I saw him in the hallway, and just the fact that they know who you are and the happiness that you bring to them, can't go unnoticed or unmentioned. I don't really like saying goodbyes either, like Ms. Dion said, but we will miss you tremendously, and I wish you nothing but the best as you move on to your next chapter. You're a wonderful leader, so thank you.
I think I'll come to next month's board meeting also, so we can continue this. Thank you very much. It is unexpected and unnecessary. I know there's a lot going on, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you to the many community members who have written in to the board and district administration, contributing your ideas and suggestions for reopening and other topics. As Mrs. Farazani said, although not every email received a personal response just because of the sheer volume and the work that we were doing, we certainly read every single one, and they also informed many of the ongoing discussions that took place and are still taking place regarding reopening. There is no doubt that these last months have been challenging. In times of challenge, this community comes together. I am hopeful that we remain mindful of the fact that we share a common purpose. We in fact do share a common purpose. We all want what is best for our students. We may differ in opinions of how to get there, but it's important to remember what brings us together is that common goal. We are about to begin a new school year with our new superintendent, Mr. Chang. I am also really hopeful that we can come together to support him and his team as we begin this school year united in that purpose. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a healthy and safe start to the school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Barry. I want to congratulate again all of our class of 2020 grads and wish them the best of luck as they head off to college. I also would like to congratulate the Southside High School PTA. They were awarded a COVID-19 relief grant for $5,000 from the National Parent Teacher Association to help meet the critical needs of students and families due to COVID with a focus on the area of local food security. And they'll be improving the food pantry at the Martin Luther King Jr. Recreation Center, and I really want to say job well done. I'm so impressed with the work of our PTAs across this district. I was part of it myself, and the work that our volunteers do in this town is just superb, and I'm so proud of their grant and what they're using it for. So congratulations to the high school PTA on that grant. I would also like to thank our principals for their hard work and the head custodians in getting these buildings ready to go. I was really impressed with the way that they are coming together and getting ready for our students to return. I thank wholeheartedly our nursing staff in advance, led by Tara Algerio-Vento, for all the communication that they have been using with us through tours, meetings, the work that they will do to protect our children and our staff. And I also thank in advance our teachers for their hard hard work in getting the return to school off and running in the most smooth and comfortable way as possible. It's so paramount to all of our children's success, and it doesn't go underappreciated. So thank you in advance to everybody there. I also would like to thank all of our assistant superintendents and our superintendent, Mr. Chang. The communication level in this district has risen to levels I never knew possible. I really appreciate the amount of time that goes into putting all of that correspondence together, making these live stream happens. Thank you to the PTA for hosting as many of the forums as they have over the course of the last several weeks. I think it's been really helpful for our parents to know exactly what's happening in real time. We do try to get information out as much as possible. That being said, anxiety levels are high, and I recognize that, and I can tell through some of the emails that we're receiving, especially this week. And I would just like to really implore everybody in the community to respect each other's choices. Everybody is going to choose the path that's right for their child, and that is their personal choice, and I think we should all support each other. So whether you're going back full-time, whether you had initially voted for a hybrid model, whether you are keeping your children home remotely, whatever it might be that you felt was a good fit for your children, that's your personal decision. I think it should be respected. I think we should model our behavior on social media and support each other in the community. I think we should find ways to understand where everybody's coming from, and I really want to leave on that note in terms of that. But the last thing I will say, of course, is not a goodbye, but a congratulations to Dr. Pelletieri for his appointment in Sachem. It's definitely a loss for Rockville Center. What I can say about him, I mean, I could go on all night, but what I could say is he's one of the most loyal people I've ever met in my entire life. You can see that through the tenure of the places that he's worked, and people jump around places constantly, and if you look at Dr. Pelletieri's resume, you can tell that loyalty and longevity and tenure are really important to him, and I'm so grateful for every day that he gave to this district, and very, supportive of his appointment of being a superintendent at Sachem, and definitely going to miss him. He adds a lot of comic relief to late meetings. We talk about food a lot. He likes Cheez-Its and chocolate, and we have all these wonderful things in common. So we will miss him. He is definitely a bright spot of Rockville Center. I agree with Kelly. The kids love him too, and I know the kids of Sachem will absolutely adore you, as we do. So thanks for being a great friend to all of us, me in particular. You've been very helpful to me as a board member, and I'm absolutely going to miss you. I'm not shy to say it, but I wish you the best. So thank you very much.
It's been an honor to serve this district. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to opportunity for visitors. We'll start with visitors in the gym. Again, if you could please come up to the mic and say your name and your address and make your comment or your question. Thank you.
Julie Canty, 59 Fountain Avenue, Rockville Center. Before I start, I just want to confirm something that I've heard on one of the Zoom meetings, because there seems to be some change in different things. Is it our policy that in the middle school or the high school, when a student tests positive for COVID, that the entire class that kid is in will be quarantined?
Well, either Dr. Leahy or Mr. Chang address that.
It's not a district policy. The process that we will follow in terms of social isolation and quarantining, if we have a positive case, is going to be directed by the Department of Health in Nassau County. Generally speaking, it has to do with the amount of time that any other persons would be exposed to an individual and the distance that they were exposed to that individual for, how many feet and how many minutes. Ms. Algerio Vento calls the Department of Health whenever we have a positive case in the district and vets all that information with them, and then they guide us in making that decision.
So not the district nurse, but the nurse practitioner mentioned on one of the meetings that was what was going to happen. So if that's not going to be the case, if you look at the Department of Health guidelines, they specifically say that a person is only within close contact if they are within 6 feet of another person for greater than 10 minutes. So if all of our desks are, at the middle school and the high school, are positioned 6 feet from other students, then it seems to me that there would not be a need for anybody in that class to quarantine other than the student that tests positive. So as you are all aware, students in those buildings change classes potentially up to 9 times a day. And if the district doesn't do anything to make sure that the Department of Health understands what policies and procedures we have, to make sure that we monitor and track who is actually within close contact of that student, we will potentially have kids on constant quarantine in and out of those buildings because of them changing classes. So my question is, what are we doing as a district to make sure that the Department of Health clearly understands what we are doing to track and trace who those students are within defined close contact?
Every district is required to establish a contact tracing and a testing procedure and protocol, which we've done and posted on the website. The Department of Health the nurse practitioner, our district medical officer, Ms. Tara Algerio-Vento, is in almost constant contact with the Department of Health, has a very good rapport with them, and there's really nothing more we can ask for her to do other than on a case-by-case basis provide the specific information that the Department of Health needs to make the necessary recommendations.
So what is that information that she will provide? So are we keeping track of where students sit every day in a classroom?
Yes.
And they have assigned seats every day when they go into a class? And so, again, if we present that information to the Department of Health, there should be no need for anybody to quarantine other than the student who tests positive, because by definition, nobody can be in close contact with that individual because the seats are spaced 6 feet apart. Is that correct?
I cannot say that that's correct. It's very dependent on specific circumstances, who tests positive.
What circumstances will we need to quarantine kids in a particular classroom? If somebody is in the upper right-hand corner of a classroom and somebody is in the back left corner of a classroom, what policies and procedures do we as a district have to ensure that other students in that class and the other classes that the positive students are in do not need to quarantine?
Again, we've implemented policies and procedures, necessary personal protective gear, distancing, and taken great pains to ensure or to hopefully ensure the safety of all of our children.
I'm not talking about safety.
These guidelines
I'm talking about quarantine. I'm talking about quarantine.
I understand.
You know, it's a big difference. It's a huge difference.
I understand.
Because when they travel to 9 different classes a day, if a kid is here and tests positive, that kid goes to art, tests positive. If our policies require entire classrooms to quarantine, we will have children who could potentially quarantine an entire quarter and never test positive. So are the policies and procedures that we have being outlined for parents? Because what we've been told on Zooms is that an entire class will quarantine if somebody in that classroom tests positive.
I think, just to clarify, we don't have policies on it, but I think some of the...
But we need a policy.
Well,
how do you ensure that this person here doesn't make that person quarantine?
I think the answer that Tara has been giving on different forums is we may need to quarantine based off of guidance from the Department of Health.
The Department of Health says within 6 feet for greater than 10 minutes. So what policies do we have to say it's not going to happen because our desks are not within 6 feet in any classroom ever?
We certainly would not have the authority to make a policy that would be contraindicated by the Department of Health.
I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
I'm saying, what are we doing as a district to ensure that when we go to the Board of Health, Department of Health, and somebody is sick in a class, that we don't have 9 different classrooms of 20 kids quarantined for 14 days?
All I can offer to you at this point to try to answer your question is to say that when Ms. Algerio Vento speaks to the Department of Health, she explains all of that.
I understand.
The students are
And I'm telling
socially
you, the frequently
distanced.
asked questions that were posted for the reopening of schools by Nassau County and the Suffolk County Department of Health say 6 feet greater than 10 minutes. How do we ensure that whatever information we are presenting to the Department of Health mitigates the amount of time that our students end up in quarantine?
So that is, what I'm trying to tell you is that that is explained to the Department of Health. We had an experience this summer where we had to talk to the Department of Health about the amount of minutes, the amount of distance that a staff member in a summer program tested positive. And from that information, they gave us guidance on who specifically had to be isolated. For example, I was in and out of that classroom several times over the course of the day that that staff member was there. They asked specifically how many minutes I was in the classroom. Since I wasn't teaching, I was supervising the program, I was in for 3 minutes, 8 minutes, 5 minutes, and none of that qualified. Therefore, I was not required to be isolated. So that specific information was articulated by the nurse practitioner to the Department of Health. So that's what she would do if there was an example right now. If there was an example, God forbid, in the high school, and she would say that the student who tested positive sat in this classroom, he was not within 6 feet. I don't know that she could guarantee that that happened the entire time, and the Department of Health would have to make that judgment.
So every day when the kids come into class, do they sit in the same seat next to the same people?
Generally speaking...
No, I'm not saying generally, I'm saying do they? Like when my kids go to swimming, they're assigned a specific lane, lane 14 East. So when lane 14 East tests positive, lane 15 and lane 13, they go on quarantine. Lane 1 West doesn't quarantine. What policy do we have to say, Johnny sits here, Jenny sits here, Tara sits here, so that we know exactly who is within 6 feet for greater than 10 minutes?
Generally, we do. I can't
If we don't have a policy, the whole class is going to quarantine.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. We understand you're looking for a policy. I appreciate it. We also know things are going to be case by case. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Gina Marie Bounds, 24 Ardsley Place. I have a different question tonight, but I just want to take a couple of seconds of my time to piggyback off Ms. RBC resident. And just to say, I think the point here is that it is really important that the Department of Health understand the organization, the structure, and the steps that our district takes to ensure that we can accurately identify who those direct contact students are. So if Johnny were to test positive, we could easily say quadrant, right upper corner, those are the direct contact students. So I think as a suggestion, assigned seating is an excellent one. Sorry. Back to my question. I understand and applaud that the district for making such tremendous effort to prepare the safe reopening of school for the elementary model, full-time, the secondary hybrid model, and of course the optional full remote model for all. In the beginning of this meeting, we heard that the district has also prepared for a seamless transition from full in-person to hybrid and from hybrid to full remote, should the rate of infection require that. These preparations are absolutely necessary. However, my question tonight comes from the opposite end, one might even say a more positive perspective. If the infection rate in Nassau County continues to hover around 0.6 to 0.7%, with RBC much less than that, has the district considered and prepared a transition plan to bring the secondary hybrid model back to perhaps a full-time model, even taking into account some of the strategies that you've used to institute that full-time model in elementary?
I would say that's something that's always been under consideration. We know what we're going into right now in the situation that we're in. We do know that we need to continue, and that's part of the reason why I'm asking the committees to continue to meet, is what we face today might not be what we faced a month from now. And based on whether or not the numbers go up, I think those are discussions that we still need to continue to have in order for us to have a plan to move forward. I also do think that we should be thinking about what those transitionary points may be with the numbers as they fluctuate, and that's something that we do need to think about. If the numbers are going down and we see that the kids are back in school and we're able to move forward in a certain way, it's something definitely that we should be exploring, and as that gets more crafted and more honed in, I'll certainly share that with the community as it comes out.
Yeah, I'm not even saying if they go down, because I think at this point, the rates are pretty impressive already, 0.6, 0.7%, again, less than Rockville Center. I'm just curious, and I get that your hands are full in trying to just reopen the schools. I guess it's a plea that if the rate continues at this rate that it is, could we start to think about what does full-time look like, again, in the secondary level? So I'll leave you with that. That's my plea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. I'm Frank Van Zant, 76 Tanyard Lane, Huntington, New York. I'm the president of the Rockville Center Teachers Association. It's been a hell of a summer. First, I want to applaud the district's efforts to improve ventilation, the music areas, the non-exhaust bathrooms, former closets turned instruction spaces, the new roof exhaust fans at the middle school. These improvements were made with collaboration and appropriate responsiveness, and I appreciate that. The discussion about ventilation will continue as we get back into school and we experience the redesign to the many dedicated spaces. Second, we applaud the district's insistence on masks, even though they're a pain in the butt, especially given the growing body of evidence that masks protect the people around us. Masks and cloth coverings that cover the face and nose, to us, not gaiters or masks with valves, will keep students safe. Further, we advocate full compliance with the protocols and policies to assure the safety of students and staff. Third, we applaud the care, the energy, the empathy, the work, the endless committee meetings of all those involved in the planning process. I believe the people of all the stakeholder groups devoted untold hours to this planning, and I think it's gone pretty well. Fourth, we recognize the continuing efforts and the continuing conversation as we work beyond the opening. No one believes that we're going to get to the opening and there won't be room to improve on what we have in many areas. The elementary teachers in some rooms will seek creative solutions to rooms that, while they do observe state guidelines with barriers and masks, and in fact exceed the state guidelines with masks, those teachers still feel crowded in a time of pandemic. Additionally, we will welcome creative solutions to the need for continued training and planning. The teachers have an unbelievable job ahead of them to teach in a way that they've never taught before, and they'll need extra supports in those areas. That'll be some of the September to-dos. For a second, I'm going to focus on an earlier discussion. I'm going to talk about the clause barring siblings from being tutored. It does have a lot, what I'm going to say about that clause will have a larger application. It's been really, for all of us, an ad nauseum discussion that's gone on. In our opinion, the policy was constructed by a team of fair-minded parents and teachers. But now, in this area of the sibling clause, we're crossing a line that can reduce our thinking to a logical absurdity. If Mark Twain were here, his statement would say that the policy isn't strong enough. If there's a child in our class, the child's friends should be barred from receiving our tutoring. The child's acquaintances and friends of friends should be barred from receiving our tutoring. The child's grandparents should be barred to boot. I'm not trying to be flip, but there is a line that we shouldn't go beyond. And what the message is that sadly, there's a lack of trust by a few, by a judge and jury few. There's a lack of trust of teachers. That's a sad thing, and I think that needs repair. Frankly, in the case of the sibling clause, the individual parents are parents who want a desired option are now barred from utilizing a teacher that they trust. I think that's just silly. I'll end on a different note. This has been a hell of a summer. I'll return to that point. We have climbed mountains since March, only to find that there are ledges ahead. There's lots of optimism, but there are ledges. And in the rarefied air, the pandemic knows no politics. We are hopeful that all of us, interconnected by community, will make good choices in the months ahead. Poor choices will affect many. If we, all of us, keep safety first as the new watchword of optimism, repeated at every touch point by every person, we'll make this a safe descent to normalcy altogether. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Arnott, 120 Berkshire Road. So I'm going back to the other points of the first two speakers with regards to getting back to full-time. If we see there are surrounding districts, so Syosset is, their middle school is going full-time, Hauppauge is going full-time, Baldwin School District has optional masks. A lot of our parochial schools are all going full-time, as is Comac District. If there's like a benchmark, or if we have some sort of goal to get back to full-time, which I hope we do, but I don't have hope. I don't really have hope for that, but I wish you did. If the numbers stay down and we see those schools are successful by, say, October or November, will we step up and make some changes?
I'm going to respond to that in kind of the same kind of way that I did the other response.
I can't hear you from here.
Okay. You can't hear me? You still can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. I would say that we're going to look at everything. We're going to look at the guidance in terms of the state. We're going to look at what's happening with our own people, and we'll reassess at every point. I think the point of what we're trying to do is to reassess as often as possible. I think I said as much in all the forums that we were in, is that this isn't going to be one stagnant year. There's going to be multiple points that we're going to be looking at. So can I tell you right now that we're going to come back full-time if certain numbers hit a certain place? I don't think I can commit to that just yet. I gotta see what happens and what the guidance is. The guidance might be changing along the way as well. But if the numbers get better, I would think that we would look for ways. We want to get our students back in, but we want to do it in a safe and responsible manner. So certainly we'll look at everything before we make any decisions moving forward.
So to play devil's advocate, if none of the guidelines change for 18 months or 2 years, do we just stay complacent? Are we not going to make any plans for additional space, to dip into our reserves, to spend money, and do what we need proactively to get our students back full-time if the guidelines never change, if there's no vaccine, if nothing changes? Do we just stay and keep waiting?
No.
What if in June you say, oh, shoot, we're still here?
I would say certainly I don't want to make a rash decision. And I certainly don't want to put us in a place, and nor would you want me to make a decision that may just be on the fact that certain things are going on without, there's so many variables out there. So we need to take all of those things into consideration before we make any decisions moving forward. We are a victim of this pandemic. And we need to make these decisions in the wisest way possible with all the information that there is possible. I certainly don't want to put us in a situation where we put our wanting to be somewhere over the safety and health and well-being of everybody that's in this community.
On a side note, there was an email that went out from Hewitt School District requesting additional supplies from parents for art. And I'm here in this district a very long time. I find it really appalling that they're asking parents to bring in their own additional art supplies.
I haven't, Chris, have you heard that from any of the?
I know that we're looking at making sure that kids have their own sets of materials, paintbrushes, even math manipulatives. We're putting packets together. So
We are not a poor district, though.
I don't have that information from Hewitt School, though.
I haven't seen the email.
So this might get retracted. This is like silly.
Yeah.
Asking for your own.
I will take a look at it tomorrow. We'll ask
Is this the art curriculum? Only these supplies are going to be used for art?
I'll have to look at that letter, so I'll speak to Mrs. Pike tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Robert Philbin, 135 Fonda Road. I heard it mentioned about open windows for circulation. Great. HEPA filters for 50 classrooms that don't have windows. Great. You know, recent studies have raised a lot of concern about transmission through droplets that linger in the air. I'm curious to see if there's anything been done to fit the HVAC units with HEPA filters, and have any engineers come in to observe the air conditioning unit systems, assure they're functioning properly. Because another part of this is it's not circulating air within the room, it's like air replacement. I think the recommendation regarding the HEPA filters is the air should be replaced every 6 times per hour, so sucked out, filtered, and back in. So if I could have some color on that, I'd appreciate it.
I'll let Mr. Bartels answer that.
We've had our architects come in to review all of our...
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, we've had our architects come in to review all of our air filtration within the district. All of the ventilation that we have has to meet a minimum of 4 air exchanges per hour, so at least every 15 minutes, which is exactly what the state minimums are, so we do at least that well. Their suggestions as far as changing the filters was not to change the filters because it does a number of things. One, if you put the filter in that's not appropriately sized, and especially with the higher MERV values, it restricts the airflow, so it limits what the filtration system can do. So the pump has to push harder, causes other issues, other breakdowns, and the room temperatures don't maintain appropriate cooling or heating. If you put in a filter that's higher than what is recommended for the unit. So that's why the recommendations have been to open windows, open doors, to assist in getting that additional fresh air in to achieve those little higher air exchange rates per hour.
And studies also suggest running the units longer than normal. Has that been contemplated to compensate for things that you can't do with the system?
We plan on running the units as much as possible. We want the continuous operation. We don't want the units to go down and kind of rest so that there is no air exchange. We want them to continue to run while the students are in their classrooms, and then while they're out, to continue to exchange the air until it's clear.
Will the current system be, do you anticipate engineers coming in to assess things as you go along, or is?
We continue to have them come in. We had some here today. There are constantly contractors that come in. We have our own HVAC mechanic on staff who goes around checking to make sure filters are replaced, systems are operating properly. We have a number of contractors that come in for some of the larger jobs to make sure the filtration units are operating correctly, to make repairs as necessary. And we do have the architects come in to review the overall systems to make sure they're all operating effectively and to make recommendations for changes. So there have been filter changes. We have upgraded several of them, have not been to the MERV 13 level, but they have been a little better effective filters put in a number of buildings.
Okay, all right, thank you. Dr. Pelletieri. I'm relatively new to this town, and I feel cheated that I will not be able to enjoy your wisdom as everyone else has. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Kristen Kelsch, 60 Charon Street. First, I'd like to start by thanking the administration and the board for all the work that they've done to get our kids back into school. While the plan may not be ideal for some, I think we've done a very prudent effort in analyzing all of the health and safety guidelines and making the best of a pretty bad situation. I'd like to piggyback off of what the first resident said in terms of the middle school and high school and contact tracing. Based on the response that was received, it doesn't sound like this district, and I don't think it needs to be a policy, but I think we need to communicate clearly with our teachers that we need to have class seating charts. It's pretty simple. Identify where a student's sitting. They sit in that same seat every day in that same classroom. The reason for it is really simple. It enables clear, accurate information to be provided back to the Board of Health. Without that, you really are going to have the telephone game, because what's going to happen is Johnny's going to go home. He's going to have potential COVID symptoms. We're going to have to go back to that teacher, Mrs. Smith, and say, where was Johnny sitting? Who was he sitting with? Potentially, if the Nassau County Department of Health wants those in close contact within the perimeter of the 6 feet to quarantine, that's one thing. But the entire class should not be subject to that. And if you do that for every class, you will be able to accurately and clearly trace the infection.
I agree.
And I think that this is a simple task for the teachers. I don't think we're asking a lot of them. It's just planning. And it doesn't change.
Right.
It's one and done.
I think it's an excellent suggestion. The only reason I didn't commit to saying, yes, everyone has assigned seats, is because I can't say it with 100% certainty, but I'm going to bring this suggestion back to Ms. McGinn and Mr. Murphy and tell them.
I'm not sure why you can't commit to it. It's not, we're not asking for money, we're not asking
No.
This is simply an organizational task that needs to be done one time, by each teacher for the classes they teach.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent suggestion, and I think it's very easily implemented. I agree. I think it's a wonderful suggestion. If it hasn't already been thought of,
And it may have been, and I would like to think that-
I sit here, not the principal of the middle school, of the high school. I did work in a high school for a lot of years. I remember most classes having assigned seating. I can think of some that were a little bit more flexible in our classes and whatnot, but I'm going to go back and speak to Mr. Murphy and Ms. McGann.
But I think in the face of this pandemic, when we're required to have contact tracing,
100% agree.
the nice to have in terms of letting children decide where to sit cannot be done. The teachers need to make that decision. The teachers need to document where those children are sitting so that we don't run into a situation where the first resident who spoke indicated that we could potentially have 90 kids out on quarantine on a rotating basis.
Yes, we
more than they're
agree.
in school. That's something we want to avoid. Our infection rates are so low at this point. We need to be doing everything possible to keep these children in school and learning. Keeping them home, even remote, is so detrimental to their mental health, their social health, and the issues that they're going to get into at home unsupervised. I think we're all parents. We all understand the risks. Our number one goal should be getting these children back in school, in front of teachers, and educated, not just academically, but socially and emotionally.
Could not agree with you more.
If possible, I would like the board to follow up to indicate whether or not this is something that the teachers will be required to do, and I think it's important. And if you determine you're not doing it, I'd like the rationale why. And I think as parents, we deserve that.
Thank you.
Secondly, I'd just like to address the coaching policy. I don't have children in school sports yet. They will be approaching that age very quickly. I think there are a lot of inherent issues in this policy. I think that particularly in the coaching section, statements number 1 and 2 are in direct contradiction of each other. I don't know how you say in statement 1 that no individual receives compensation and then make an exception for it. Conflict of interest is conflict of interest, and it needs to be avoided. If we're recruiting the best coaches in this district and we're paying them well, if they want to coach for us, that's great. You cannot receive money from an outside travel team where there's a clear conflict of interest. We talk about, there's added language here which includes objective selective criteria will be applied. It would be interesting to know what that criteria is. The way it's written, it's very loose and arbitrary. And then we go on to say employee awareness. Staff members in violation of this policy may be subject to discipline. I think it would be interesting to understand what your criteria is for that discipline. I think you are opening yourselves up to a can of worms if you have one set of criteria of discipline for one coach and another set of criteria for another coach. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else from the gym? Oh, there we go.
Hello, Debbie Cuevas, 4 Rutland Avenue. I was just wondering if there has been any further discussion on what will happen to cleaning the desks as the middle school and high school students switch classes?
I think with the last we left it was that in the guidance right now, in the New York State guidance, it's not allowed for students to partake in cleaning of the desks with sanitizing wipes. So I think what we're doing is to ensure that we have the first and foremost, we want to make sure that we keep the kids' hands clean. So we have the hand sanitizers that are 80% alcohol based in there. That's one measure that we're taking. I think additionally, we are looking to make sure that when we can, I guess, to get in there and to be able to clean effectively throughout the day. In terms of the sheer volume and the number of people that we have, we don't have the custodial staff to be able to do that. But we're looking to ensure that we have wipes available in the classroom, right? We're having a tub of wipes there, the hand sanitizers, and just ensuring that we go in there after the kids are out at the end of the day at school to make sure that we're continuously wiping. So we're doing all those things in the realm of what we can do to make sure that we keep them clean. And I guess we're sectioning off certain areas, right, in terms of getting to
Yeah, we're increasing staffing during the day at all buildings, bringing in night staff to assist during the day. So there'll be more cleaning going on to address all the high-touch surfaces, and then especially at the secondary level, to address classrooms when they are empty, because virtually every classroom is empty at some point during the school day, so we can get in there and clean them at least once or twice during the day. We know that's a critical issue. As Mr. Chung had said, the requirement is to clean nightly, but as often as possible. So that's what we're trying to do, is as often as possible.
And the students, I'm sorry, I talk loud. The students, if they bring their own wipes, they're allowed to wipe the desk down? You can't say yes or no.
I don't think, what we're going to say is that we're going to follow the guidelines in terms of what we're able to do in terms of sanitizing.
Could you say that again, Mr. Chung?
I said we're going to follow the guidelines in terms of what we can do in terms of cleaning, and certainly provide the hand sanitizers that's there. In terms of what individuals do, I don't think we're going to be able to comment either one way or the other on that.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Pelletieri, I'd like to thank you for your service, just in case I don't make the next board meeting. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members from the gym? Oh, every time I say it, I see another person pop up. How are you?
Erica Messier, 493 Rose Lane. I just had a question regarding elementary schools. Has there been any conversation in creating a remote-only section at each grade level for the students who are opting to stay remote across schools?
Conversation, absolutely. We've had conversation in terms of the beginning of what we may look like in terms of sectioning, who we would have, how we would do that. I think in terms of some of the principals and what they're doing and trying to get some balance within the classes, I think they're working on some of that. But to have a dedicated teacher that's a remote teacher becomes a little bit difficult in terms of two things that we're trying to achieve. One is to ensure that if we were to go back and we were able to bring kids back and people were coming back, they would be able to come in to a structured and continuous environment is what we were trying to achieve. And then secondly, the additional section that we would be looking at, that would be additional teacher and staff and headcount that we would look to bring in. I know some of the other districts and what they're doing is they're taking away some of the services and moving some other teachers around to do so, but we also don't want to cut off those services in terms of our philosophy and what we're trying to do in providing a well-rounded, structured day for our entire students. So we have discussed that, and in terms of what we were trying to achieve, this was the model that we wanted to go with.
Okay. So I do know there are a lot of surrounding districts that are this week hiring teachers to teach a remote-only class for each grade level, and it just seems, from a teaching perspective, making the lives of 80 people easier, and then ultimately our main goal is our kids, making those kids who are remote feel as if they have an equal access to education, because if you're the lone duck in your class at home, getting your teacher's attention might be somewhat difficult, and they might feel as if their access to the teacher, to class, to their peers is significantly different, whereas if they were in a remote class with all other remote students and a teacher that was dedicated to them, they would have more of an access to education, especially our youngest students in grades K1 and 2. So I would love for that conversation to continue if possible, because I really think it would benefit the students, and financially it's 5 or 6 positions. You could even combine grades if needed. I had just had 2 other things as well with regards to the art supplies. Covert also received that email. It was sent to me from the school, and then I forwarded it out to the rest of the parents. It was about maybe $20 to $25 worth of supplies, ranging from construction paper to watercolors to Sharpies to markers. So it would be helpful to know if those supplies are indeed needed. I think most people probably already bought them.
Yeah, I would imagine that they are needed. Certainly, if anyone were to struggle with that, we would work with that family without a doubt. But I'm hearing Dr. Zuar, our Director of the Arts, requested this. So I will follow up and take a look at it, but I'm certain it would not have gone out lightly just because we were thinking about it. That is a need.
Okay, just so I can continue. And then the last, just because I'm up here with regards to coaching, I also don't have a child who is of high school or middle school age, but I do know quite a lot about varsity sports as a 3-season varsity coach. I really do think the language that you have in your policy, whatever you're saying about your teachers and your music teachers, it should be mirrored exactly for the coach. There shouldn't be different rules or different language for different people. I think, again, a school district's top priority is kids first. And I don't really see the way that that policy reads as protecting kids. I think it protects the coach. And as a coach, your priority should be to the students that you are tasked to coach in the district that you are. And if you feel the need to coach in an outside place, then I think you should have to make a choice. At one of the last board meetings, or maybe it was a live stream, there was conversation about not being able to even field a JV soccer team because there weren't enough numbers. I had sent an email to the board and to Mrs. Rosetto. I was curious to know what your numbers are at the modified level in soccer, in grades 7 and 8. How many girls you have trying out for those teams? I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that.
I think we would have.
Or a roundabout, sorry.
On any given year, there's an average of 24 to 48 eighth graders. But then from that, in middle school, there are 4 seasons. So you can play soccer in season 1 and volleyball in season 2, where when they come to the high school, they have to choose between soccer and volleyball. So we lose a little of the numbers, the 8th grade numbers for that. There are kids that leave the middle school and don't come to the high school. There are a variety of reasons, but that's, in general, we have 24 to 48 in the last, 7 years, average.
So I would just figure with those numbers, you're essentially quadrupling them, so you should have between 100 and 200 respectively girls coming out for sports. I don't see field hockey listed as one of the options. I would think that the fall sports at the high school offered for girls is much less. So it just seems to me interesting that you can't find 30 girls to play soccer in a town that's known for soccer, which would then, I would make the inference that perhaps the word is out about what you need to do to get on a soccer team, and to me that feels sad. But for the policy, I really do think the 3 things should say the same exact thing, just switching out tutor, teacher, and coach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jackie Tobin. I'm at 83 South Village Avenue. I'm sorry to ask this question, and I don't want to harp, but if you could just please clarify one thing for me. I know there was talk about, we talked earlier about the attendance, logging on from home and working remotely. You had said earlier under extenuating circumstances. Does that mean they need to be under quarantine or doctor's note? So it wouldn't be, I don't feel comfortable to send my kids to school 5 days a week, or my child doesn't want to sit in, what I'm envisioning, a prison visitation room for 5 days a week. That's what I'm worried about. And I thought, when I thought we might have hybrid as an option, in addition to the people who still want to go full-time, now I feel like we're left with either sending them back, under full-time circumstances, under these conditions, or opting remote. And I thought there would be a little bit of leeway. I think we had spoken a little bit about that, but tonight it was not clear.
Yeah, I think in terms of, again, going back, completely understand the position and how people feel different ways about who and how they want to send their children to school. I think in terms of keeping the continuity and the structure for our kids, that because we have these entry points coming back in at certain markers and the ability to go remote at any time, to cause kind of the going back in and out during the week would be difficult for our scheduling needs. I think when we spoke, it was about scheduling needs and things that have to do with services that we would provide to certain students and how they schedule them on a 6-day cycle. On a 6-day cycle, it becomes a little bit difficult. So for us to be able to keep that continuity, to keep some structure back in, to get our kids back into a rhythm of being in class, we're going with the 2 models as is. But certainly, you could start out, and if you want to go remote, you can go remote. But if you are going to go remote, we're asking that you wait to those markers to be able to come back in, and that's kind of our way to be able to kind of navigate.
No, I understand with the cycles, but so, meaning we can't, like, I can't, my kids have had too much, and they want to stay home one day and do it remotely. That's not an option?
Yes, that's not an option.
It's not, or it is?
No, it's not an option.
It's not?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I think I misunderstood when we spoke, and I think other people, I think from people that I have spoken to, I thought that was the impression, that you could have your kids log on from home and have the attendance counted.
I think we got the impression that misconception was happening. That's why I asked him to clarify it earlier, because I had heard that as well. I think that he was talking about these different situations when he had mentioned that they would count it.
I would just ask to reconsider, because I feel like, I'm not 100, I am hoping everything goes well, but I'm not 100% set on having them back in the classroom, especially just under these, hybrid would have been different, there would have been more spread out, and I wouldn't want to sit under these circumstances. My youngest is 6, and I have another one in the school, and I don't know, I would ask you to reconsider or think about whether that could be an option, because I just think it's going to be too much for, maybe it will be great, and I'm going to tell them to do it, but I feel like I should, if they've had just too much of sitting behind this thing with the mask on all day, I don't want to have them miss school, and I certainly don't want to just take them out. I feel like we're not left with much more of an option, whereas this way it really doesn't disturb anything. Everyone can still go full time, but if I want to keep them home, and it doesn't have to be a set every Thursday, Friday, but maybe once every other week, or until things get a little, I don't know. I would just ask that you consider having that, as an option, or at least having us discuss it with our principals, And it does also reduce the number of kids in the classroom if people did decide to periodically keep their kids home to log on from home. So maybe just something else to think about. It just makes me nervous to just know that they're there without any option to keep them home, except for not having attendance,
I certainly understand what you're saying. And believe me, I've thought about this about a million times.
Sure, and I'm sorry. I feel like I'm left with
And these are fair questions, and these are things that people are thinking about. I think everyone, whoever has questions here, has a lot to think about, not just us up here, but I think as parents, I certainly understand that and I empathize with that.
I can discuss it with my principal, and I know when we spoke, I thought that's kind of where it was going, and if that's an option, if it's off the table, then he's not going to make an exception, but.
I would say kind of look at it in terms of, and I'm just resonating as a person to you right now, more so than a superintendent. Like, if you could look at it as the 4 days of orientation that you go in, we're allowing people who want to go to remote to come in and meet with their teachers. As you go through those 4 days, then you go start the next week. If you want to start and see what that's like, and then maybe take them out remote, you could certainly do that. And if there was ever a point that you might want to come back in, you look at that month of September, that goes by very quickly, and then you have October, and what we're asking is that you wait till that marker period so that we can have some organization and some structure for the students as well, for the teachers. So I think that might be an opportunity to start out, maybe with the short week with the 4 hybrid week, especially if you're at the elementary school, to be in 2 days, and then to be out 2 days, and then come back and see how they feel during that week. And if that doesn't work for you, then you certainly as a parent could make that decision to pull them out remote and go stay remote.
Yeah,
but if you want to come back in,
have them out. If I had to choose right now, I would send them back, but it just seems very harsh one way or the other. I don't want to have them home 5 days either, I don't think that's good for them. It's not good for any of us in the house, but I don't know. I would just encourage or ask that you still maybe think about this being available to parents to do, see how it affects the kids too. No one's really we all put this in place with these desk guards and masks, but none of us have been in this situation before. We don't know. The kids may freak out. I don't know, but they may not take to it well at all. And that's more what I'm thinking. I hope it all goes great, and I hope that I don't ever have to think about this again, but I like having options, and I thought that would have been an option available to us.
I certainly hope that all goes right as well.
Okay.
But
just leave it open.
Thank you.
Things are, I could tell you what we're talking about now. I'm sure a month from now we're going to have other topics to think about. So,
all right.
we're set in this model because we can, again, I talked about the strength of our model is our fluidity. So you never know what's going to happen within the next couple of months. But as of right now, those are the 2 models that we have, and that's what we're going to start with come September 8th.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Burgee, 15 Hendrickson Avenue. Can you just talk a second about our staffing situation and our substitute situation? Because I'm just envisioning, like we had talked about earlier, if we're quarantining whole groups of classes, and even in the middle school and high school, if you're talking about taking out 9 teachers at a time, do we have enough substitutes for that? And were we able to replace everyone who retired? Or I don't know what the situation is from anyone retiring. I don't know what the teacher situation is, if we have enough staff.
I think I'm gonna defer a little bit to Robert and Mr. Bartels and Dr. Leahy here, but I think as of right now, our staffing, majority of our staff want to come back. The substitute situation, we're not going to know. The one thing that I would say is that if we're talking about substitutes, we're competing not only with people within this area, but all of Nassau County in terms of subs and people needing to be in and out. I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to think about very carefully. I do know from just the conversations that we've had some people that are leaving, and that we are, looking to fill those positions. We had new teacher orientation this week, so we have kind of filled some of those positions that are coming in. I think that too, unfortunately, is going to be a fluid situation. How we react to that and what we do and how we allocate our resources and what we do with that is going to be critical moving forward. But certainly it's something that we're thinking about. We already had a shortage of subs to begin with. And when you look at the situation of what it could possibly become, that could become, a major lift for us.
Have we even, I know, Dr. Leahy, we had spoke about too, our nursing substitute list. Have we been able to expand on that? Because that, I could see taking out a whole school potentially if we lose a nurse in a school.
We've built it, literally by 200% in the last month, so.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I said statistically we've increased it by 200%. So yeah, it's in good shape right now. We're always looking for substitute nurses, but Ms. Algerio Vento is on your same page. She's been looking all summer.
Okay.
Good shape.
Any other members from the gym? I don't know if there's any members from the auditorium that would like to come down.
There is not.
There is not? Do we have any emails, Jackie?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a limit to the amount of time children will be on their
Jackie, could you move your microphone closer, please?
Sorry. Is there a limit to the amount of time children will be on their iPad when in school, or if we go remote? Will the elementary remote learners be distributed hard copy assignments? What is the breakdown of hard copy versus use of iPads to complete assignments? This is from Mrs. Ayanu, Denise Ayanu.
So the question is how much screen time?
Screen time, yeah.
Yeah.
iPad when in school, or if you go remote, and then will remote learners be given hard copies of assignments? And what is the breakdown between hard copies and iPad assignments?
I don't have a specific ratio in terms of hard copy versus the amount of screen time that they would have, but we are cognizant of screen time, and we're also cognizant of building in breaks where we could actually have some breaks from the actual screen itself, and to be able to have some worksheets. I believe we're working to send some of those things home at the younger grade levels, so people are going to be remote as well. So I don't have a specific ratio, but I do know that we're cognizant of that, and we're building in activities to be able to transition from one to the other to give a break from the screens.
Okay. From the Hamilton family, The question is, would like to confirm that there will be sanitizing wipes available in each classroom at the high school for a student to clean their desk before they use it.
There will be sanitizing wipes in each classroom for the teachers to use. Students, we cannot provide students with the cleaning products to clean their desks.
Okay. And from Emily Puccio, when will Chromebooks be given out to high school students?
When will what? I'm sorry?
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks. So the question is, when will they receive the Chromebooks
At the high school.
at the high school? We're doing the best that we can. I know that we have orders that we've sent out. We've talked about that at the last, a few board meetings ago to make that shift. As soon as we get them in, we're going to try to transition as quickly as possible. Dr. Pelletieri, I think when we talked, we were thinking probably at the New Year mark that might be able to happen.
Yes, as mentioned tonight by Mrs. Barry, who took copious notes at our curriculum meeting, we are expecting them around December and hope to disseminate them to our students and faculty at the high school in January at the latest, obviously hoping for an earlier date.
Okay. From Pamela, were more custodians hired? How many times a day will desks be cleaned if the students are in the classroom all day? And a second question, do we have a balance between the kids coming into Rockville Center Schools and the kids leaving the district? How many kids will be in the class?
I'll answer on the custodians. We're not planning on hiring additional custodians. We're utilizing our night custodians during the day, so there will be overlap, so we'll have additional staff in the building to get to more of the classrooms, more of the desks throughout the day.
What was the second part of that question?
The second part of it is, do you know the difference between the number of kids coming into Rockville Center Schools and the number leaving, and how many kids will be in each classroom?
I don't think
I
we
guess
have.
it means leaving as to leaving other.
Like, are they leaving to go to another school?
Schools, or
leaving us as a community as
Yeah.
that I don't think we have a number for, unless I don't think we have a number for that.
So we do have that information, just not off the top of our heads.
Yeah.
And we'd have to pull it out of the database.
But that's assuming, I'm understanding that email to be just leaving sporadically all over the place, so that could count for people that may have never even stepped foot into our district. I mean, maybe I'm just reading into it too much. Never mind.
Okay. I wasn't clear. Okay, the next question is from Afri Forat. The question is, I'm interested to know what material the desk partitions are made of, and if it's plastic, is it BPA free?
I would have to check to see if it's BPA free. I know it's a poly surface that has been approved by New York State. Where we went. We actually were looking at a different product earlier. The state had denied use of that product, so we went to a different one that met all the New York State requirements.
Okay. This question is from Stacy Pfaff. I believe the question was just asked, but I'll read it. Have you considered adding a dedicated remote class for each K to 5 grade with a teacher who would tailor his or her teaching to the entire remote class, including incorporating more visual contact with other students throughout the day? If this has been considered and rejected, please provide the reasons why. If it has not yet been considered, would you consider doing so, even if this could not be put in place before the first day of school?
I think we did answer that earlier.
Yep. From Sharon Giblin, if a student shows up to school with a non-functioning mask, who's responsible to troubleshoot, rectify this problem before they enter the building? And what are the rules and ramifications for students that constantly play or remove their masks on purpose?
I think that's up to security in the buildings as they come in to make sure that the students have an appropriate mask. We have plenty of replacements, so if somebody does come to a school without an appropriate mask, we will be able to provide them with one. There'll be surgical masks similar to the one I'm wearing. But that could be anybody throughout the day. So if the mask is loose fitting, if it's falling off, it could be identified by a security guard coming in. It could be identified by an aide walking past somebody. It could be identified by the classroom teacher. In any of those cases, we would supply an additional mask.
Okay. This is from Mr. James Gelman. There is money in the budget to do some construction work at Central Synagogue, which is adjacent to Wilson School, to make 2 classrooms available for future use as additional classroom space. While we may not utilize this space this year, do you have any plans to move forward with the renovations before the close of the fiscal year? Wilson has been overcrowded for many years, and it would be great to have this space made available for use as soon as the situation for a return to normal schooling allows.
I think that we would need to kind of think on that more than anything else.
Yeah, we haven't made that decision yet. We would have to see as the year progresses how we go.
I think it's something that we need to discuss to get a better sense of what it is that we're going to do. And like Mr. Bartel said, that we need further discussion on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is from Elizabeth Levine. Would the school system consider putting a fence along the Hempstead Avenue side of Hewitt, similar to that on the DeMott side, to ensure safer outdoor environment?
So they're asking about adding a fence?
Yes, adding a fence.
I think that's also another thing that's probably just something that we're probably going to have to just discuss. I'm wrapping my head around trying to get all this other stuff going on. I think we'll get to that in terms of our
fence
process.
along one side. I'm assuming they mean the one down by the street, the lower one down by the street. So we have one on the one side. The other side might be more difficult because that's where we have the bus drop-offs and so forth. So, and the students gather there. So we can look at it. We might be able to do something.
Okay. Next question is actually on that policy. Sally asks, why is there an urgency to push policy 6480 through when the biggest issue is getting our kids back to school safely?
Who's that from, Jackie?
Sally S., interested parent. School sports have been postponed until at least September 21st. There are no musical events scheduled that would prompt a need for private professional musical services. The teachers will be overwhelmed just trying to adjust to the new reality and the responsibilities at the beginning of the school year. Let's focus on the larger issues at hand, take our time, and make sure the procedure follows the board bylaws. Importantly, the board should make sure that the policy they pass actually eliminates the existence of conflicts instead of allowing administration to simply sign off on a conflict and perpetuate the problem that has persisted for years. Okay, this is from Kristen Sporell. Can you tell us when the desk shields are arriving?
They're expected to ship this week and arrive at the end of next week.
Okay.
I was in contact with them today, and they said they're still on target.
Okay. Somebody wanted to add that Liz Garcia just wanted to add Covert third grade parents were also asked to purchase art supplies for the coming school year.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say we asked all elementary schools to do that. And again, if there is any issue or concern that a parent has, please contact your school principal.
Okay. There's a question from Jenny Costaro. It starts, I can't start an email to the board without first thanking you all for your hard work and sincere concern for our children's safety. After watching the meeting, I was compelled to write a counterside for quarantining classes. Although I know it is not the school's ultimate decision on who should quarantine if a student tests positive. However, I would like to say, in my opinion, the whole class should absolutely quarantine if a fellow classmate tests positive, even if the end result could be a student misses a month or more of school. Missing school is a much better option than risking even just one child getting COVID. There is nothing more important than the health of the children. There's a question from Andrea Moore. Can you please elaborate on what the isolation room looks like? Are there multiple rooms for being able to isolate one child per room? There could be several students with fevers on a given day, but not all will test positive for COVID. If there are multiple students in one isolation room, is that child who didn't test positive now exposed and have to quarantine?
So the isolation rooms were chosen because they had window and there was ample space to socially distance students if there was multiple students in the isolation room.
That's all I have. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 12th, 2020? A second? Second. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Can I have a motion to approve the financial reports as listed? So moved. A second? Any questions? No. All in favor? Aye. Can I have a motion to approve receipt of financial reports as listed? So moved. A second? Any questions? No. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve items for action A through E plus an addendum 3. And I have a resolution that I'm going to add in, and I will read it. Resolved that the Board of Education of the Rockville Centre School District herewith waives the notice requirement of Section 3019A of the Education Law respecting the resignation of Assistant Superintendent Christopher Pelletieri, notwithstanding the failure of Assistant Superintendent Christopher Pelletieri to meet the statutory requirement to provide 30 days notice of his resignation as required by the aforesaid provision of the education law. So again, I'm asking for a motion to include that resolution and items A through E plus the addendum 3. A second? Second. Any questions? No. All in favor? Aye. Can I have a motion to approve the addendum to the PAR? A second? Second. Any questions? No. All in favor? Aye. Any abstain? Aye. Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to retire to executive session to discuss a specific personnel matter? A second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is September 10th. Joe, you're the last man standing.